Good evening. Welcome to everybody to the 4,494th meeting of Council on the 19th of April 2021. I'd like you all to please stand while we do the Welcome to Country and Lord's Prayer. I acknowledge acknowledgement of country. I would like to show my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, of the elders past and present and emerging on which this meeting takes place.
We thank you, Lord, for the honour of being called by our fellow citizens to this office of honour and trust. Give us grace diligently and free from private interest or prejudice to discharge the duties entrusted to us to the common good and as in your sight, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Attendance this evening. We've received an apology from Councillor McLaughlin. She's not well enough to attend this evening. Could I have a motion to formally accept that? Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Cressoy. I put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. And we have a new minute taker this evening, so welcome. And I might do a little bit of turning around as we go along to make sure that the process is picked up clearly. Declarations of interest for this evening's meeting. Are there any? If not, the response was nil. Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting, 4,493. Councillor Sanderson and Councillor, seconded by Councillor Miles.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the minutes, but with some corrections that I sent through later this afternoon.
Yes.
That the minutes didn't contain corrections to the minutes prior to that one. Those included the renumbering of resolution 261/21 and resolution 268/21. The word "be" inserted before the word "provided," and that Deputy Mayor Jim Sanderson voted in favour of resolution 2681. So with the Mayor's casting vote, it's not required. And then in the minutes relating to the last meeting, and I think Councillor Cresswell might have another one as well, but at item 3.1 on page 4, in relation to the in relation to the amendment on page 5, in relation to resolution 284/21, the words that council continue the work of the working party until the end of term were not part of the resolution. That was an earlier amendment that failed, so that should have been left out of the final motion as well as the later amendment.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, that also that will need to be renumbered.
Okay. We got that those details? Yes. I think you submitted those, so we've got a record of that. Are there any further issues? Councillor Cressoy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I'd already jumped to the first page of the meeting, but in the minutes on the same item, after the amendment is accepted, it's noted that the motion is from Councillor Collins and Councillor Miles, but the motion was Councillor Sanderson's motion. And as I understood, an amendment gets accepted, but the mover of the motion stays Councillor Sanderson.
No. Once an amendment is put in place, that becomes
the motion.
Yeah.
So that was my motion.
Thank you.
But it's recorded as to who originally put it.
Councillor Sanderson. Yeah, thank you.
Are there any further comments in relation to the minutes? Any discussion? If not, I'll move the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Now, before we move on to the business paper, tonight is a rather different meeting to what we normally would be holding for two reasons. One is obviously COVID. And secondly, we have a very large number of people wishing to exercise their democratic right of presenting their views to council. We have somewhere around 58 people, I believe. So we've split the meeting into two parts. One is where the actual business is being conducted. People who want to speak are waiting in the room next door with a TV screen so they can monitor what's going on. So when we get to that point in the business paper, they'll be invited in to do their presentation and we can deal with the matter. It's just to save congestion and let people be comfortable with spacing. Now, as a result of that, are proposing that we reorder the business paper, and I've circulated that. And the reordering is based solely on the need to allow people to do their presentations and for us to allow them to go home. So I'd like to move a change to the business paper order as per what was circulated. Yes, Councillor.
Firstly, Mr. Mayor, I haven't received any circulation about reordering of this business paper.
It was sent out at 5:20.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I was going to suggest I'm going to withdraw motion 3.3 because it's covered in other parts of the business paper just to assist. I'm also going to suggest that items 4.1 and 4.3, given the number of speakers and given the time constraints that we're going to be under to finish by 10 o'clock, consistent with our code of meeting practice, are deferred to an extraordinary meeting next Monday.
Second.
I've already moved that we reorder the business paper, so we'll deal with that first.
Secondly, it was.
Well, yes, the one set out, but his copies.
So I move the motion and a second by Councillor.
No, we already have a motion on the table.
It was seconded. It wasn't seconded.
Councillor Sanderson.
Oh, okay.
So the motion on the table is to reorder the business according to what is being proposed in that information I've provided. I'd like to make a further adjustment to that in relation to the presentation to Mr. Tony Coote. I would like to move that to the start of the meeting so that it can be done. So there's some, yeah, okay. So is there any further discussion on that?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to even look at this. So what are you just reordering it? Are you changing, are you deferring any of it?
No, all I'm doing is reordering it to accommodate our number of speakers we have this evening.
We're not going to finish it anyway.
We can't.
So we can't finish. We have to take something out. And
Oh,
put
we may very well do that when we get to the items. Okay.
This is, yeah, I don't support this. This is, I'm not sure what this is achieving. It's just reordering the speakers, but there's going to be speakers that get here and they're not going to speak. They're just going to wait here for 4 hours.
Sorry, we're debating.
Yeah.
No, we're not
we
debating.
are. We are.
No, we're not debating.
Okay, well, this is, okay. No. I'm just going to waste it.
Is there any further discussion in relation to the matter? If not, oh, sorry.
Just a point of clarification.
Yes.
On
Councillor
Mr. Mayor,
Russell.
you've moved a motion,
Yes.
it's been seconded.
Yes.
Are you proposing an amendment to the motion?
I can, yeah, no, I'll propose an amendment if it assists. I'm very happy with Mr. Coote's presentation as we went to the first item for the convenience of the gallery, but I would amend the motion that number 3. Well, I'm going to withdraw item 3.3 because it's dealt with elsewhere in the paper.
Yep.
And I will move a motion, move an amendment that we defer items 4.1 and 4.3 to an extraordinary meeting to be held next Monday.
There is seconded to that amendment, Councillor Collins.
You can just accept it into your motion.
Yes, the only issue that I have in relation to that is we've got a lot of speakers that have come to speak on the issue. Are we going to hear them first?
I'll speak to the motion, the amendment if I could.
You may.
I don't believe that we're going to get through 55 speakers at 3 minutes apiece tonight and have time to deal with the substantive issues of what's in the business paper plus 4 fairly large matters of business for council. So I think in the interest of doing this logically, we need to remove some items and give them a dedicated time so that council can debate it and we can hear from the speakers, because we have 55 speakers at 3 minutes a poll is 3 hours of speakers, and we're not going to get through all of the business and give everyone their time in 4 hours. It's just not logistically possible. So some of these items probably should have been dealt with further at a further meeting, but I think that if we move to have an extraordinary meeting held next week for the property strategy and conversely the housing strategy, which are similar items, and then we deal with Boronia Park and we deal with Gladesville Reserve and the Flying Fox Management Plan and Mr. Coote tonight. I think that's probably a logical way to split those items up.
Yes, that's any further discussion? Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I was a bit against the amendment. I mean, we've got a lot of people showing up tonight. I think they're like happy to say. And a better way to handle it would be certainly we're going to have to move things to a different meeting. We're not going to get through this agenda tonight. But I think it'd be far preferable if we give everyone the opportunity to speak and have spoken on the matter. Then we move to defer the meeting or defer the matter to a meeting in the future at whatever time seems appropriate.
Any further debate,
I'll
councillor
just say that
Collins?
that's probably not every speaker is going to speak tonight, regardless of how we do this. So it shouldn't have been done this way. I think we just need to, rather than keeping it 4 hours, spend 3 hours having speakers, and then, I mean, we're already 10 minutes in. We just can't do it. We can't fit it in. It's too
Councillor
big.
Crassoy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. If I could just make a suggestion, perhaps.
Certainly.
I think it's wise. I think those two matters are significant enough that they do need the time of council and the input of the community and to not be pushed through in a hasty way. We don't want anyone staying longer than they want to be here. But people have made arrangements on their Monday evening to come and speak. And so if I could just suggest or perhaps foreshadow a change to the amendment. We do defer those items to a later meeting, but that any people wishing to stay this evening and speak to their item is welcome to, and it will be considered with that item at the next meeting, and they won't have to come and speak again. The input they give tonight will be taken on board. Anyone who doesn't want to sit around for 4 hours and listen to everyone speak will have another opportunity if we defer those items to next Monday evening, and they can go home now and enjoy some popcorn and watch us online instead and present at the next meeting. And that might filter out the 58 people a little bit. And if it doesn't, it doesn't, and we'll just have to get our skates on. But people have taken time out of their Monday night to come and speak, and we can't send them home unheard. But those two items need to be heard separately and given the time they deserve.
Thank you. Any further debate? I think everybody's now spoken in relation to the matter. Are you foreshadowing an amendment, or?
Sorry, I just spoke to the amendment I foreshadowed, but
No.
if you're happy to accept it into your initial motion.
Well, we're dealing with an amendment at the moment. So does Councillor Miles accept that into the motion, into the amendment?
I think that I understand the quantity, but I think that we will. You want to have people speaking to the item that is considered my personal view. So I think that
So you're
while
not
it's stretching our minds.
So you're not accepting that as an amendment. Okay, so that's a foreshadowed amendment, that the issue of deferring plus the added thing that would deal with those that wish to be heard tonight at the meeting. So we have the motion, the amendment before us. Everybody clear on the amendment? I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? Against? Declare it lost. There's a foreshadowed amendment from Councillor Crassoy. Do you wish to move that? Yep. So in my understanding of the foreshadowed of the amendment is the issues that raised by Councillor Miles, plus the addition that those that wish to be heard tonight can be heard. Is that correct?
And that they don't have to speak again, that what they say tonight will be.
Oh. Yeah. Okay, so there's a seconder to that, is there? If not, I'll second that for the purposes of debate. Do you wish to speak further to your amendment?
No, I already did, sorry about that.
Okay, that's all right. Any further debate? If not, right reply. No. put the amendment. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. That now becomes the motion. Is that unanimous or is there dissent?
I'm a little bit confused about what we're doing now. So this is to,
It's very clear. We've moved. There was an amendment moved by Councillor Miles that has been lost. There was a foreshadowed amendment by Councillor Prasoy that has now been successful. I'm just trying to find out whether it was unanimous or whether it was people were voting against that.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
Okay, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay. So that deals with the minutes in our order of business this evening.
Just, Mr. Mayor, just a
Yes,
point of
Councillor
clarification on
Cresswell.
that. If that is the case, can we let people know that if they'd like to go home tonight and speak next Monday night, they're welcome to?
Yes, they probably have heard it in there at the moment, but what we'll do is deal with items 2.2 first, and while we do that, a staff member can go and find out those that wish to stay and speak. Is that possible, Madam General Member?
Yep, I'll sort it.
Okay, so it's with great pleasure that brings me to item 2.2 on the agenda this evening, which is a follow-up mayoral minute from a resolution of council a few months ago, which relates to a very important issue and recognition of outstanding service within our community. And the mayoral minute tonight is about the presentation to Mr. Tony Coote in recognition of service to the Conservation Advisory Panel. So before I speak more to that, I'll move the recommendation is that the report be received and noted, that in acknowledgement with Council's resolution of 256/21, the Mayor present a plaque acknowledging the outstanding service of Mr. Coote. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Sanderson, Deputy Mayor. Is there any debate? I'll now just make a few comments in relation to the presentation. Mr. Coote, as I said, has given outstanding service to our community over 50 years. I don't think there's anybody, even one of our town clerks that was a town clerk for 46 years, has ever contributed that much to our community. And that contribution is not invisible. We see it every day when we walk the streets or go out of our homes, the importance of heritage and conservation in this area. It's a keystone, a cornerstone in our community strategic plan, as recognised widely, not only locally, but nationally, the significance of Hunters Hill from a heritage conservation perspective. Mr. Coote, if I may call you Tony, has in various roles in the larger part of his contribution to the Conservation Advisory Panel, has been the representative for the Hunters Hill Trust. And we all know the outstanding work the Trust does. And Tony has been the leader of those issues within the Conservation Advisory Panel. The Conservation Advisory Panel is a very important part of the process of local government in Hunters Hill. It is a clear recognition of the importance of conservation and heritage, but it provides advice from a range of expertise and community people. And Tony's been one of those for an outstanding 50 years. So congratulations, Tony. And I'd like to, have we moved the motion? Yes. We have, so that's been adopted. Okay. So I'd like to come forward. Please suspension of standing orders, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Yes, okay. Suspension orders is suspended with Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Miles. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. I'll now come forward and do the presentation to Mr. Coote. Tony, congratulations on your service over the last 50 years. Enormous service. This plaque is quite special. Council has two plaques. One is for freedom of municipality, and this one is one that's given to members of our community that provide outstanding service. So it recognises that 50 years. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
So would you like to say a few words?
I've got a few words written down.
Well, you most welcome to. It's your stage.
Now, what do I do with this? Do I?
You can put it back in its box. No, you don't
No,
have
no,
to hang it
no.
on the wall.
Oh, okay, okay.
There you go.
All right. All right, now I've only got 6 pages here. Put my right glasses on something. Am I allowed to sit down?
Yeah, you are allowed to. Yeah.
Okay,
You can be heard on that one. So.
excellent. I'm a bit flabbergasted. Well, thank you, and particularly thanks to Ross for tonight's acknowledgement. I started on CAP when it was known as the Hunters Hill Advisory Committee. I arrived on the panel as the representative of the Royal Australian Institute of Architects, replacing David Turner, who, after chatting me up on the ferry one morning, nominated me for the task as he was leaving the area and the Institute needed a replacement. I don't remember exactly when that was, but no doubt it's in the council archives. Sometimes later, after I joined the Hunters Hill Trust Committee, I switched to represent the Trust on the panel, and I think it was Brian McDonald who took over as the Institute's rep. My being on the panel at all was somewhat accidental, as was my being in Hunters Hill at all. That's despite the fact that my grandmother had lived in the ground floor unit of Bentham in Wyballina Road, and Julie, my wife, who's here tonight, Julie's grandparents and her father had lived in the family home at 29 Woolwich Road for many years. And also, Julie and her family lived for a while in Lloyd Avenue. Well, Julie and I got married in London in 1967, the year after I finished architecture at Sydney Uni. She'd gone ahead at the end of 1966 and I followed after completing one of those dreadful things called a post in one of my final year subjects. A year later, when we returned to Sydney, Julie's grandfather, Roy Barker, had just died, leaving his house, Yorondola in Woolwich Road, empty. We put up our hands to be caretakers of the place until the family could find a buyer. And when the house was finally sold, Julie and I needed to find somewhere to live. That place turned up in the Saturday Morning Herald real estate section of the Herald the day we started looking. It was a semi just a few houses down Woolwich Road at number 87, and we could just afford it. Those were the days when you could afford to buy a semi in Woolwich for it was about $25,000 or something ridiculous. We lived there for some years. Julie worked at the ABC and I worked in an architect's office in Kirribilli. And during that time, we became aware of a magic looking house right on the water's edge near Boronia Park. And you could see it from the bridge. One morning, we noticed something that looked like a sign fixed to the front of the house. Could this magic place be for sale? Julie and I checked the Gregory's and determined that the place had to be in Bonifan Road. We drove slowly along the street until we found a dilapidated set of steps running down towards the water. Down we went and discovered the house, and that it was in fact a for sale sign. Wow. On the way back up the steps, a woman poked her head out of the adjacent house, greeted us warmly, asked us if we liked the house, and volunteered. They were only asking X dollars, but would accept Y dollars, which was quite a bit less. My God, that's what we could get for Woolwich Road if we sold that. Although that didn't include any allowance in the budget for making the place habitable. It actually had a demolition order on it. It was so badly in that sort of state. So anyway, that's how we got to be the owners of Dempsey's Boat Shed. In a wonderful twist to the story, the woman who gave us this information was in fact Tilly Shelton Smith, who owned the boat shed and who lived in the adjacent house, which had been designed for her by the famed Melbourne architect Roy Grounds. Tilly was a Melbourne girl after all. So in a final twist to my accidental connection with the heritage of Hunters Hill, 3 of the houses Julie and I lived in or have had strong connections with are featured in the Green Book. 29 Woolwich Road, 13 Wyballina Road and 31 Bonifer Road. So perhaps my connection with heritage is not quite so accidental after all. So finally, I'd just like to say thanks again for the recommendation. That was great, and this play. And we'll have to figure out where to put it. It probably isn't right to place it in the bathroom, is it? Wouldn't we?
In the hall.
In the hall, okay. Well, so,
congratulations.
thank you.
Right, before we, thank you, Tony. Before we resume standing orders, I'll just all the way, Ross.
It's going to be interesting enough.
So it's just the addition. Okay, we now need a motion to move back into, okay, we've got Councillor Miles and Councillor Sanderson. Any debate? Motion, all those in favour, declare it unanimous. That now moves us to item 2.2, which is
2.1.
okay, 2.1, we've dealt with 2.2, which relates to 2.1 relates to acceleration of actions relating to Tarban Creek Flying Fox Camp plan. We have some speakers this evening, or at least one. Mr. Pike, do you want to address the council? If you come forward to the microphone.
My friends be back. Usually not too bad at public speaking, but I usually make inappropriate jokes, so I'll keep it.
Yeah, you have 3 minutes. So.
All right. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to attend council tonight. My name's Greg Pike. I'm here on behalf of the Tarban Creek Flying Fox Community Action Group, which us as residents have formed quite recently. We're here to address council and provide our support with respect to item 2.1 being the acceleration of actions relating to the Tarban Creek Flying Fox Management Plan. That's a hell of a lot to take in. Look, just a bit of background. My family and I have lived in the Hunters Hill LGA for about 10 years. We really love the area. We support council. We've got 3 children of varying ages. We actually live in Mary Street, right opposite the Bushland Reserve, where it joins, I think it's Richmond Crescent there. We've lived in that place since 2017. Originally, when we bought the house, we were warned by the real estate agent, "Oh, don't worry about the flying foxes. Council's got a management plan in place. It's all under control." And it was a bit of a novelty at first, but the population of the flying foxes has absolutely exploded, and it is not a fun place to live. We've been very reliant on council and fairly patient on state government to come forward with a meaningful and reasonable plan to deal with the flying fox camp. I think we've gone through majority of level 1, and we'd like to see that escalated to level 3 relatively quickly. It's now at a stage where it's we can't enjoy we've got no quiet enjoyment of our house that we own, neither do our residents. That extends effectively from us all the way up to Isla Street, Sunnyside in Gladesville, all the way back down to Manning Road, and the resident action groups gaining some fairly significant momentum. The defecation, the excrement, to the stage where my kids were on a trampoline and got weed on by bats only about 4 weeks ago. It's disgusting. It stinks. We feel like we're prisoners in our own home. We can't open our windows without the smell just wafting throughout the entire house. This all escalated when we recently received a letter in the mail offering us a couple of free plants, and anyone who knows that part of the world knows that there is nowhere to put a spare plant. The bushland has been absolutely destroyed when we first moved into the area. There might have been a couple of thousand. I think at last count, we've got our own advice. There's probably verging close to 10,000. And within the buffer zone, the natural vegetation's been completely wiped out and destroyed, where we couldn't actually see Huntley's Village, or Huntley's Cove, I should say, from our house. Now we can see it clear as daylight. So look, we appreciate the support that we've received from the councillors. We appreciate those who have come down and met with us. We finally feel like we're getting a little bit of traction. So we'd like to extend our support to really push for level 1 to go to a level 3 and skip level 2 and find some meaningful options and scenarios and resolutions to assist the residents. We understand that the bat population is a significant part of the ecosystem, and we don't wish to disturb or upset that, but so too are we, the residents. We're a very important part of this LGA and this community. And the little ecosystem, which is Hunters Hill. So we're just requesting some significant support and some meaningful action if we can. Thank you.
Are there any questions of Mr. Pike? If none, thank you very much for your presentation this evening.
Thank you for your time.
I'd now like to move the recommendation. Sorry, is there another? Oh, 2 more. I can apologise. Okay.
Okay, I'm reading on behalf of Miss Adele Elmsley, and she said, "Hello, I live in 8 Mary Street, Hunters Hill, and I've lived here for 11 years. The only issue with the bats have just become unbearable for residents. I live many houses before the park, and I wonder how they're sleeping at night, and the smell that is coming, and we are not as close as other houses. The bats are too close to the houses, and I don't think this is right. We need to move the bats on, as we have families and children living in close proximity to the bats. Please help us." And I also have Mr. Richard Kearney, and he said, "My wife and I strongly support Mayor Ross Williams' initiative to lobby the state government to fast track the approval for council to move to a level 3 action under the Tarban Creek Flying Fox Camp Plan of Management. We specifically ask that council adopts an active dispersal plan to move the camp away from Tarban Creek completely. The number of flying foxes has increased dramatically this year, and it is no longer sustainable to have a colony this large, this close to residents."
Thank you. So that concludes the issue in relation to people addressing. I'd like to move my recommendation, which is twofold: that we receive the report and note it, that the council agreed to the mayor advocating on behalf of the community, requesting from the state government approval to allow acceleration of actions within the plan to alleviate severe impact on the households in the surrounding area. Is there a seconder? Councillor Miles. I've moved that. Councillor Miles, second. The report is pretty self-explanatory, and we've heard here this evening from 3 residents the difficulties which the colony is now creating for residents, not only just in the immediate future, but it is expanding out as the population grows. Council is required to go through a formal process, which it has in terms of establishing a camp management plan, and that was done through consultation with the community, and council has been working through that plan to see how it can address via the requirements of the government's process to alleviate the problems. But so far, stage one options have not been able to address the issue, and actually it's getting worse as we've heard this evening from the residents. So as it's not a direct responsibility of council in terms of the legislation, it is, I believe, necessary for council to bring to the attention of the minister the difficulties our community are having, and to request that we move forward or be given approval to move forward to level 3. So there's a letter attached which is proposed to be sent to the minister and to the local member for as information. So is there any further discussion in relation to the matter? Yes, Councillor Cresswell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to propose an amendment.
If I may,
Certainly.
that we add note number 3, that council notify the residents of the minister's response and the next steps based on that response. And item 4, that council continue to partner with the community on this issue. And I would like to suggest a slight change to the last paragraph of the letter, if I could, Mr Mayor, just to show that we do acknowledge the significance of flying foxes as key pollinators and their protected status. I'd like to change the last paragraph to say, we recognise and respect the national importance of protecting this critical pollinator. To this end, we request your assistance to safely fast track, etc., whatever the rest of the paragraph says. And that the last line say, council requests your approval, endorsement and financial assistance to safely fast track, etc.
Well, I'm happy to accept that into the motion. I think that's logical and good addition. So is the seconder to the motion, Councillor Miles, have to, so that is accepted into the motion. Thank you very much. Is there any further debate in relation to the matter? If not, I'll put the motion. I don't need right of reply. All those in favour? Against? Declare that unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Pike, for your time. So thank you. That now brings us to the next order of business. We've dealt with item 4.1, but I think, well, I don't think, we did resolve to hear those that wish to put their position. Are there any residents wishing to speak to item 4.1?
So are we bringing forward, we're missing out on all 3s, we're bringing these ones first?
Yes, that was the resolution of which I gave you, the revised thing.
Oh, okay, so that actually, okay, that part.
What we're dealing with are those issues that have resident input. So we're just seeing who would like to address council in relation to that matter. And if not, we'll move on to the next item, and that matter will be deferred or has been deferred to the next council meeting discussion tonight. They're coming, okay. I don't think so. Yeah, I think it might be next door. Here comes Dr. Sharp now.
Dr. Sharp speaking at the next item of Boronia Park. As well.
He withdrew. So we really only have 2 speakers, or we need a Mr. White's read out, appears to be the.
Presumably, if it's read out, we can deal with it when it comes to the next meeting.
I agree. So we've covered that item. Any further speakers?
Sorry, through Mr. Mayor, Mrs. Judith Johnson.
Is she here tonight?
We're just looking for her. She indicated.
Okay.
The items. The housing strategy.
We can do that at the meeting when we have that. So, okay, we don't have any speakers for that, so we'll move on to the next item, which is 4.2, Boronia Park Sports and Community Facility.
No, that was-
Business case.
Yes.
No, that wasn't deferred. That's on the business paper tonight.
Oh,
So
that's
do we have a motion in regards to 4.2?
Move.
Okay, before we deal with that, we'll have any speakers. Are there any speakers still available?
Yes.
So we, yeah, okay, we'll bring them in. Are there any to be read out? Madam General Manager, if they are, we should start with those.
Please get put in first.
Person. Okay. Person, person, okay. We'll hear the speakers first. Sorry? Yeah. Good evening, everybody. We have our speakers. Mr. Sadler, is he? No, it's not listed as in person or. Okay. Anyway, we have some speakers to start with, so we'll get moving along. The first speaker on item 4.2 is Mrs. Dowsett. Could you limit your presentation to 3 minutes, please?
Okay, can you hear me if I talk this close to the mic? Yep, okay. I'll start with the conundrum of the origins of the sports community facility for Boronia Park. I have here the release from our local member of August the 2018, bringing welcome news of $1 million funding towards restoration of the heritage grandstand in Boronia Park. The intention to provide improved amenities for the grandstand was included in the 2015 plan of management and was widely supported. However, it appears there was subterfuge at play, and the rugby club, claiming they were responsible for gaining this grant, albeit from a discredited funding program, determined that it would be put entirely towards a clubhouse facility built to their dimensions and in their chosen location. Council assisted them in strongly promoting this use of the funds, regardless of any alternative preference or proven benefit for the local community. Cynically, the revision of the 2020 plan of management became the vehicle for achieving this goal, but it's the wrong building in the wrong place. Regarding the club and the 20-year license, with their substantial influence over this project and presumably due to their skills at raising 1.5 million in funds from the taxpayer, it seems the rugby club will be the major user and entitled to a peppercorn annual license fee. An additional 1.5 million has to be found from other sources before the project can reasonably be started. We were told there was an MOU to this effect, and we asked for reaffirmation that this commitment holds. That's to do with the funding. It was stated that there would be no cost to ratepayers from the construction of this facility, but already we are hearing that this is not so. Ratepayers' contribution so far is set at 100,000 for project management and staff time, but there is also now the inclusion of construction costs relating to sustainability, apparently viewed surprisingly as add-ons and not as being an intrinsic part of the building. How can items such as solar, recycled materials, low energy building materials, insulation, water tanks, etc., not be integral to the club's development project costings? The business cases provided in the meeting papers will not satisfy the quadruple bottom line approach. While council wants to view this facility as a long-term asset, it is hard to see how a sufficient income stream can be achieved through hiring fees from community groups. And there's no information on what other sporting groups will pay. It is calculated that yearly upkeep and maintenance will start at close to 38,000, assuming a 15% occupancy rate. The rugby club, beyond their peppercorn fee, will contribute to electricity usage and cleaning, while insurance, water usage, lift maintenance, etc., are covered by the ratepayers. It seems a disproportionately good deal for the club and indefensible to those of us who are told there is no funding, haven't got far to go, no funding, for instance, for supplementary planting to enhance the critically endangered turpentine ironbark forest within our iconic park. Our council appears to have no core budget for maintaining the natural values of our bushland or for pursuing other priorities listed in the plan and management. The risk assessment outlined is overly optimistic and the business case has not justified the oversized scale and costs. It needs serious revision to avoid this building becoming a drain on ratepayers should it go ahead.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Mrs. Dawson? If not, thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. The next person is Mr. Sadler, but he's not here at the moment. Ms. Enright, could you please come forward? 3 minutes. Normal procedure is that if you extend over 3 minutes, we need to approve it. So
Right,
I was a
okay.
little bit lenient on
Okay, well, I'll try and get this in 3 minutes. Hi, my name is Barbara Enright, and I would like to thank Huntersville Council for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My late husband and I moved into Boronia Park just on 41 years ago, drawn at the time by the beauty of living in a green and peaceful hub in close proximity to the CBD. Living in Park Road, we took advantage of our beautiful park for exercise and recreation, walking our dogs both day and night. We also took a great deal of enjoyment from watching local sporting groups plying their trades on the ovals. I would like to say up front that neither I nor any of my direct neighbours object to the upgrading of sporting facilities in the park. Having better change rooms, toilets, showers and storage facilities for all local sporting groups is something that will better meet the needs of the local schools, sporting teams that use the park for training and competition. And indeed, it is my understanding that the 2 grants that the council has obtained from state and federal governments was to build something for those purposes, with some of the funding to rejuvenate the heritage listed grandstand. Our concern is that the funding for these sporting facilities have now morphed into a much larger project to build a community centre for the council to use for commercial purposes, hiring it out for weddings, engagements and other events of this nature, 6 days a week and up till 10 p.m. at night for up to 220 people at a time, right in the middle of the park. Again, if there is to be a community centre in the park, let it be for community purposes. Activities like yoga, Pilates, bridge groups, book clubs and the like. Activities catering to the local community and where we can avoid large crowds of people and the result problems of traffic, noise, lights and the potential rowdiness in what is a quiet suburban precinct. These are activities that can be run during the day or early evening, and these or similar activities do not have as a cornerstone loud music and alcohol. Staging large events in a community centre in the middle of the park will bring it with problems associated with traffic, parking, noise and lighting, taking away our right as local residents to enjoy the peace and quiet and turning of the hub of turning the hub of Boronia Park into a traffic funnel once again. As a residential stakeholder, we pay rates and are directly impacted by park activities. I feel it's worth reminding Council that the public toilets were once closed for a period due to degenerative behaviour. I can't help but foresee the behaviours that will come from frequent alcohol-fuelled nighttime events. Finally, I would like to state that we share the park with our local flora and fauna, and we would hate to see these essential components to our local ecosystem for commercial purposes. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Miles.
I just wanted to perhaps point out on page 211 of the business paper, I'll just read this out. Council's standard closing time for hire in the community halls is 11 p.m. As a result of community feedback, it is recommended that hours of use for the facility be limited to 10 p.m. for the licensee or casual hirer, with a short layover period to clean the facility. Further to its proposed limit of usage of the facility in the evenings, it is proposed that the facility will not be available for hire to individuals or private celebrations such as weddings or birthdays after 5 p.m. So is that something that allays some of those fears that there's going to be private events after 5 p.m. or raging into the night? Because in this report, we're setting the rules essentially that after 5 p.m. no additional usage of that facility is allowed.
Right.
Yeah.
I will take that on board. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Yen, would you like to present to council? 3 minutes, please.
Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Emily Yan, and I have been a resident of Hunters Hill for 11 years. I reside on Park Road, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Boronia Park Action Group, which represents a significant portion of concerned residents. What started as a plan for upgrading of sporting facilities at Boronia Park, with the aid of the funding intended for amenities such as the female changing rooms, now has evolved into the proposed building of a double-story sports and community facility. And this is at double the original budget. What's more, to justify this financial sustainability of the project, the so-called community facility will be open for commercial hire, and therefore will create significant impact on noise, traffic, lighting, and cleanliness of the park. While much has focused on the cost of the building, the potential cost to the inherent value of this beautiful park is much greater. If this facility is to be built, we are strongly opposed to its use for private functions after 5 o'clock. And we are against the holding of events like birthday parties and weddings. And we are mostly concerned with amplified music and alcohol consumption. The amendment, like stated by Councillor Zach Miles, the closing time, it's now proposed to be moved from 11 o'clock to 10 o'clock is welcomed generally. And I should add that it needs to be applied to both the indoor big room as well as the outdoor area. So there will be an adjoining terrace, and this is where the sound is going to travel to all the residents surrounds Hunters Hill. Our question for you is, with these opening hours, how are you going to police the police of these hours? And how will loitering and antisocial behaviors be prevented and managed? And we believe we are a stakeholder of Boronia Park, and we urge the council to do the right thing and to protect the interests of not just selected sporting groups, but the greater local rate-paying community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Yen? Yes, Councillor Miles.
Not through you to the General Manager, perhaps we could address that issue of closing time and locking up. Assuming we've got plans to lock the facility after a certain time, outdoors and indoors.
Yeah, Madam General Manager, can you assist in what are those provisions?
Mr. Mayor, council has a range of facilities across the whole municipality, and we manage those facilities. We have terms and conditions for hire of facilities. We look at who hires, the purpose for which they hire. We check insurances before people hire, and also the nature of those events. That's not to say everything goes smoothly, because people are human, and when that happens, we encourage people to contact the police if there are antisocial events. But we have those safeguards in place, as many other councils across Sydney have for their facilities.
Thank you. Any further questions?
With the locking of the facility, would that be just like code that you lock the facility, and would you send staff to make sure that the place is locked up after those?
Madam General
after
Manager,
use?
we don't normally enter into questions, but I'll let the General Manager answer.
Through Mr. Mayor, at the moment we're changing over our access to our facilities with cards, so we can see who enters at what time and who leaves at what time.
Mhm.
And that helps us also monitor usage.
The follow-up.
Yes, Councillor Miles.
Is my understanding is that the undercroft area and the toilets are going to be gated and locked at night time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Mr. Walker, do you wish to address council? Please.
Good evening, my name's Blake Walker. I'm here on behalf of Huntersville Rugby, as well as a local community member for some time. As a rugby club, we'd like to reiterate our wishes for the sports and community facility, that we're satisfied with the process of the design as it's been continuing. There's been some amendments being made that we've put through, and we're working with the architect, but we're very pleased with those plans. For the paper at the moment, we've got the draft agreement for license, the license, and they've been provided to us, and we're having a review of them at the moment. I think they're looking quite satisfactory at our end. To highlight the importance of the facility, just 2 weeks ago there was a subbies rugby tournament held at Boronia Park, which included the women's sevens. There are 8 teams from around broader Sydney. The tournament was actually live streamed through Clutch TV. The event there had probably over 100 women participating, and unfortunately a lot of them were getting changed on the sideline out in the open. At the same day, the senior part of the team were also having their trial games, and the juniors were using the facilities in the morning. So certainly from a rugby perspective, we do get a lot of use there at Boronia Park. I would like to confirm that we're satisfied with the curfew times for the activities of the facility, although I think that probably should be something that covers under the development application and conditions that go with it. Mostly the activities that we'll be conducting at the facility, what we already do at the grounds, being after match functions and presentations. And of course, they'll continue to be run in accordance with the council's guidelines. There's excuse me, there's much emotive commentary around there being the function centre. We consider it to be a community facility to be able to use for the broader community and the groups that one of the previous presenters mentioned. There's been much work in the consultation and the design through the broader community, and obviously the fundraising also, to ensure that this significant piece of infrastructure to the Huntersville area is realised and brings all users to the park's benefit. The council paper before you certainly show that we're well down the path with it. Looking forward to seeing it through, and I'd like to thank you for your efforts to date and continue working through with you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Are there any questions of Mr. Walker? Yes, Councillor Cresswell.
Actually, sorry, apologies, not of you, Mr. Walker, but a trigger from his comments through you, Mr. Mayor. Is it correct that there is yet a DA to come, which will have all those conditions and licence conditions attached to it, and that when that comes, it will go to the community and likely a local planning panel for consideration? Is that correct?
Madam General Manager, could you assist?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councillor, you're correct. So at the moment, as outlined in the report, we're finalising up the designs in consultation with user groups. That will then be subject to a development application. During that time, it's envisaged there'll be further consultation with the community, in addition to what would be standard for a development application. And that will be assessed by an independent planner and considered by the LPP, the local planning panel.
Thank you. Any further questions?
I have another question, but I won't keep you standing because it's another one for the General Manager.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yes, so we now need a motion in relation to the matter. Councillor Miles has moved the recommendation and Councillor Collins has seconded that. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
Did you have a question?
Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'm quite happy. Obviously, I withdrew the motion that I put before because substantively it's addressed in this item. A lot of the residents will be very pleased about the community groups getting access after 5 p.m, but no private events being held after 5 p.m. It was never the intention of council to have this run as a function centre. I think that the rugby club's done an extraordinary job with the netball club and with the cricket club in fundraising for this community facility. We've got state funding and federal funding, and the club's contributing a significant amount of money. So I don't accept that this is in some way a good deal for them. In fact, I've never, in my time involved in local government, ever seen a project where the council is gifted essentially such a significant piece of infrastructure without making any significant contribution financially to it. It shows that the club is dedicated to Boronia Park, and I think through the way that they have conducted themselves and engaged with the community and been willing to turn up to the participation days and those open days and have that frank conversation and be accommodating, and I hope that council is also setting that light as we've moved through this process, that we'll end up with the right facility for Boronia Park, built once and done correctly. Again, the issues that are being raised will be dealt with more substantially in the DA. Hours of operation, absolutely what is in the report and in the motion, that it be restricted to 5 p.m. For any private groups. Certainly the security element, which is that the facility is locked every night, and that there are appropriate arrangements for lighting, passive surveillance of the building, that it is kept clean, that there are security cameras. There are all those things that will deter any bad behaviour in and around the building and park. And importantly, the acoustics, which is something that's been raised again, and I think that something that needs to be done and will be done as part of the DA is a serious acoustic report to try and minimise any effects that the facility will have. But those steps are all to come in the DA phase, and I think this is a good forward step to allow the process to continue, but to give a little bit of surety to the residents of the park that their concerns are being heard and that council is responding.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. I'd like to move an amendment to that motion, and I have two parts to that, which will be 5 and 6. The part 5 will be that the facility will not be available for hire after 10 p.m. or 5 p.m. on Sundays for any license or casual hire with a short layover period to clean the facility. And point 6, that the facility will not be available for hire by individuals for private celebrations such as weddings, birthdays, etc. after 5 p.m. Is there a seconder to the amendment?
Mr. Mayor, that's covered in the report, is it not?
It's not covered in the motion.
I'm happy to accept that into the motion.
Well, I would like it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sanderson.
I'm happy to accept it into the motion if the seconder is happy.
Yes, okay. So those 2 points, do we have those there?
I think we've got
Okay, so that becomes that is the motion. So we now have 6 parts to the motion. I think that now addresses some of the issues that the community have been concerned about since this project started, and I'm happy that we can now clarify those issues for the residents. Yes, Councillor Crassoli.
Mr. Mayor, I still just do have a couple of questions.
You certainly may.
I did just want to ask, one of the speakers mentioned about the funding question, and I did just want to confirm that that is the case, as you've added things into the amendments, but in the report, it is the case that if the funding can't be raised, the project doesn't proceed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. And then my other point is the matters of really sustainability basics, and we are just talking basics, would also be included in the DA application.
Yes, they're a requirement to lodge an application that you meet basics. Is that correct, Madam General Manager?
Through Mr. Mayor, I might ask the Director of Development to respond to the requirements.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, that's correct. Basics need to be addressed and others as well. The environmental issues need to be addressed, and I'm assuming the applicant is aware of those, and we'll be providing those as part of their application.
Thank you. And then one more question, Mr. Mayor, and it may have to be taken on notice, or it may not be able to be answered. With the Priory development, or not development, but with the Priory lease, which is finalised, correct? No, not quite finalised, so can't be discussed. My question is, the owner of the Priory is planning to fully restore the building and is being given a potentially 20-year lease or a 10 plus 10-year lease. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor?
Madam General Manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll take that on notice, but it should be noted that that facility is in council's ownership, care, control and management. And so any lease we'd be looking at optimising community benefit back.
Just from a comparative point of view, just to say that it's not the first time this has kind of come up, that people are willing to put a lot of effort into restoring things and make an arrangement with council.
Okay. Any further questions? Anybody wish to speak to the motion as it now stands? Sorry, we can't enter into discussion with the gallery.
I'm sorry, the acoustics are so bad at the back. I wasn't sure what Elizabeth was saying about the MOU. I think you referred to my question about.
I'm sorry, we can't enter into discussion with residents once we've started the formal process.
You agree with my.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. Okay, any further discussion in relation to the matter? If not, right of reply.
Not necessarily.
Okay, so that we're clear on the motion, it's the 4 items in the recommendation plus a 5th to limit the hours of operation and a 6th to ensure that there's no private functions such as weddings and birthdays, etc. So with that, I now put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your attendance this evening. It's most appreciated. We now move to item 4.3. And we've got speakers.
Wasn't that deferred?
Yes, but we've agreed as a council to hear the speakers if they wish to speak. So we're just getting those that wish to speak tonight.
Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify while we're waiting for the speakers to come in? I did make the point that the people who speak tonight and their points are taken on board tonight, and they won't then be speaking again next Monday night.
I don't know how you exclude people from speaking a second time, but the understanding I have of the motion is that we're giving people the opportunity to speak tonight and not come back next time.
Yeah.
Save them to come back at it the second time. But it is a council business paper and people are entitled if they wish to come back.
And the number of speakers is at the discretion of the mayor?
Yes. Good evening. So just so you're aware, what we've agreed to is to defer this matter to a special meeting or extraordinary meeting of council, potentially next Monday, but to allow residents the option of still seeing they've come tonight to do their presentation this evening. We're accommodating that. So you're most welcome. And
So, Mr. Mayor, can I just ask the Director of Corporate Strategy to appoint a clarification on speakers?
Sure. Yep.
As I understood what was being discussed, those that were speaking tonight would be speaking tonight. If they wouldn't be effectively speaking twice, they'd have to reapply to speak.
That's right.
Twice, yes. But in terms of the intent, as I understood it, was they would speak tonight and that's taken as once. So effectively, you wouldn't be speaking twice about the same speaker wouldn't be speaking twice about the same agenda item.
Well, that'll be a different agenda and a different process, I would imagine. But the option tonight is for people to address council, and one would expect that if they've addressed council, then they probably won't want to again. We'll deal with the matter at that meeting if people come back and wish to address council a second time. But tonight is an opportunity for those who have turned up to do their presentations.
I'll have to speak next time.
You may, yeah, sure.
Run away now.
You certainly may.
So everyone was offered that opportunity.
Yeah,
Right, you actually get it.
Oh, okay. Well, no, you're not obliged to speak this evening. If you want to speak next time, you're quite
The
welcome.
material I sent through, does that not become part of the record? I come and send the different material.
No, it's deferred. If you're
It's
offering to
deferred.
speak next time,
Let's defer.
your submission goes to next time.
But what's written is stays, there's paper.
Yes, that's right. Okay, Dr. Sharp, do you wish to address council this evening?
Thank you. Before I start, I'd like to say this audio quality next door is almost unintelligible and it's very, very difficult to follow. I hope you can fix that up for next time. It's appalling.
It's rather extraordinary circumstance.
Yes, sure.
We've got, we have to set it up pretty quickly.
So the draft community infrastructure plan has raised a great deal of concern to the community living nearby or using Hunters Hill Village, in other words, Victory Park region. And perhaps it's only that the document fails to explain the implications of its proposals using terms such as there will be no net loss of open space, implying that some of the present green open space will be lost. Not saying what this might mean. In other words, it wasn't very well written, and I'm hoping that a lot of the concern in the community is due to the poor writing and not to some hidden intention. But perhaps there are serious concerns, and as citizens, we deserve to participate in these decisions and not to have them thrust over us. The draft CIP proposes the construction of many buildings without indicating how this will impact on the way people enjoy and use this part of the municipality, or even explaining why additional housing, why additional retail space should be located here, how additional traffic could be managed, not mentioning the additional parking that's already unused underneath the hotel. It fails to explain how such construction could be funded without a massive transfer of public space to developers. And do we really need another community hall when item 3.3 is concerned about there being adequate demand for the proposed Boronia Park community facility? There are so many unjustified assumptions, such as that council's administration function should be transferred from the town hall to the village. The basis for the draft CIP seems to be that Hunters Hill needs to cater for a large increase in population. And because the draft CIP, produced by the highly respected consulting firm Oricon, an international engineering, design and advisory company, because it shows clearly that we don't need to cater for an increase beyond that which will occur naturally, council proposes to reverse engineer the population projections to suit the development proposal. I wish to correct the impression given in the report of council's draft CIP survey that the community accepts these proposals. Although the period of public exhibition closed on the 9th of November, no report has been available until Friday, a period of over 5 months. So this is our first opportunity to criticise the way the submissions have been reported in tonight's business paper. The report states that 327 people filled in the draft CIP survey. But the detailed report shows that 45% of these identify themselves as members of one organisation, the All Saints Hunters Hill Football Club. And 40% of these responses contain near identical wording.
Motion to extend. Councillor Miles, Councillor Sanderson, all those in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously. Thank you.
So 40% of those submissions contain 3 phrases. I think the offerings are just right. I think this is good use of sport. I would use these spaces. I don't think these really represent independent views. The Hunters Hill Trust conducted its own survey using SurveyMonkey and used the results to make a single submission. And we feel that our submission hasn't been given due weight. We sent our survey to approximately 150 members for whom we have email addresses and received 65 responses. That's 40% response rate. That is significant for a survey. Extremely high. And we don't feel our submission. I'm going to, I have a copy of this.
Yeah, that's the second extent, that's the first extension. Is there any further? Yes, Councillor Sanderson, Councillor Miles, put the motion. All those in favour, against?
Thank you. This leaves us with the awkward status of this policy document. Being still in draft form, it can't be used as a justification for any statements in the local housing strategy or indeed anywhere else. There's a need for council to resolve this problem by starting again. I suggest the CIP be reworked to become a simple statement of intent with its new name as the property strategy. And the new simpler document can then be put on public exhibition and become a useful policy document. To simply give the CIP a new name will leave us with an unsatisfactory document and cause deep confusion in the community who won't fully understand the difference between the draft CIP and the revised document. I hope you will consider this seriously. Let's have a properly revamped property strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Is there any questions of Dr. Sharp? If not, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. Reverend Armstrong has declined or wish to speak tonight?
I do.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Council, for allowing me to speak. This plan remains a deep concern of myself, along with many members of our community, members of my parish, as its impact will be felt for generations, there's no doubt. It's therefore not something that should be rushed and deserves far more planning and community consultation. As the head of a not-for-profit and the custodian of significant heritage buildings in Hunters Hill, I totally understand the need for council to find ways to find revenue to support itself into the future. And I would really love to support finding ways for that to occur. However, I find the process whereby this particular report has come about has been an extraordinary one. There is no business case that's been put before us as a community. We can't see what is justifiable there. There seems to be particularly no research provided around what the community actually needs and actually wants. That's not done as yet. That's still to be done. I understand that the next steps will involve some of this, but to be frank, the answers that they're likely to come up with have already been predetermined by council's needs and not those of the constituents. To understand the community's needs means spending some significant time and money doing some research and meeting and talking with community groups and individuals about what they really see as a need for the future. It's also important to note that council, as part of this process, has to understand already what is taking place in the community and the impact that creating new spaces will have on existing groups and individuals throughout that, especially groups who provide significant amounts to this local community. Consultation does not include hastily putting together a Zoom meeting quickly as a result of constituents such as myself asking questions. It feels like a tick the box process, and that's exactly what it seems to be in the report, tick the box. The council's response to our legitimate concerns as churches and others was to carve us out as community groups of the report altogether so we would not be considered in terms of the impacts upon us by council in the future. Then we received letters offering to essentially buy us out, to fund us, to find ways of funding us and assisting us through community grants, through council grants, which are pretty pitiful, $800 to $1,500. That would not even pay for the front door of our church. That's not what we asked for. In fact, if you read all of our submissions, not once did we ask for money or funding from council. That's not what we wanted. Then we received emails asking us essentially to do council's work, telling us what facilities we have on offer and what we use them for and how they're used for and how we might be promoted. Again, that's not what we asked for or desired. What we ask for is a process by which council considers what's already in play in our community and then doesn't develop and create things to compete with us, to work with us instead of against us. This feels like the cart before the horse, with the aim of filling the cart and the coffers rather than meeting communities' real needs. I believe that this entire process would be wise to place on pause for councillors to take it to the election and the community to engage with it further. I encourage councillors to defer the matter at this time.
Councillor Miles and Councillor Sanderson, all those in favour?
My last line, so.
Sorry.
I do encourage you to defer the matter at this time and instruct its officers to do more research and to bring a business case which has actually been really consulted with the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Councillor Miles, you have a question.
What is it that is in the plan that you believe is competing with parish?
In my parish, so facilities such as creating new community halls or developing new activities such as redeveloping this space into becoming a venue such as an arts facility. I mean, we as a church try to actually lease out our church for usage for music and arts events, and those again become competition with us. We're not alone. There is a church right next door who tries to do the same, and we're all competing for the same thing. And so it's about asking, well, what is the market that actually is already there and being competed for versus actually what is needed in the wider community, and therefore where council might actually make its funding from, where it might make real money.
Is there any further questions? Councillor Collins?
Is it just the venues? Like, is there anything else in the plan that concerns you?
I suppose for me, the concern is actually ensuring that we identify what's actually really needed in the future and also present. That's what I really am concerned about, that it's not just something we go, we need to make money. I totally get that. We need to make money. I have to find ways of doing so, just as you have to do so. But I don't want it to be at the expense of other community groups. That's what I'm most concerned about. And that's what it feels like at this stage. The council's just jumping in, going, we have to do this. No doubt you do. But at what expense? That's why I want to report that's actually far broader. You've actually got to do the further research and the work to find that answer.
Are there any further questions? No. Okay, thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
attendance and your speech this evening. That matter is now going to be deferred to the extraordinary meeting. So thank you. Yes, Councillor Sanderson.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder whether I could ask a question through you to the General Manager. I think one of the sources that has been a trouble to the community over this is some of the errors in the report. I wonder whether the second paragraph on page 254 could be corrected.
Well, this will be discussed at the next meeting.
Well, the only thing is I'd like to have accurate information before the community when that meeting occurs.
Yes, well, I think you can put a note into the General Manager in that case. We've decided to defer the matter, so we're not going to deal with it tonight. That now brings us to 4.4, which is an active item.
What about?
Oh no, sorry. Okay, yep. It's 4.8. Yep. Sorry, the Sustainable Advisory Community Committee. So if we move forward to there, are there speakers in relation to this? I don't think there are.
Yeah, there is.
Oh, there's a late one. Yes, okay. Council's happy to accept the late. Yeah. Oh, yes, okay. Heather Armstrong. Seeing that was late, is there a formal motion to accept that? Councillor Collins, Councillor Miles, motion, all those in favour? So we're just waiting now. Thank you. If we just wait for a moment, Councillor Miles has just dropped out. Turn to our business paper. Well, Councillor Miles, it's going to be a bit longer. We might start. Would you like
Yes.
to give Councillor a 3-minute presentation, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm here to speak about the Sustainability Action Working Party, which is now a committee as per the recommendation, which I strongly support. I am so happy to see the members of the committee having been approved by council. I'm here to really encourage council not to sideline this committee, but to see it as an overarching requirement of council dealings. Nobody can hear next door, by the way. It's terrible, yeah. But to see this committee as an overarching committee which really has to have an impact on all council dealings. It's ironic that another item on the agenda tonight, about which I'm not speaking, is the synthetic grass issue. Now, if that Sustainability Committee had that overriding impact, which I strongly hope it does have, that item should not have even got to first base because it's so damaging to the environment. So the impact of this committee needs to be assessed in its overriding function within council. I'm very happy to see that it is to be a committee with 3 councillors, but the question is, what will its impact be when this hiving off of these issues without regard to the sustainability of them can be so flippantly disregarded? And that's what's concerning me. That is this just a window dressing exercise of a nice committee that we've got that says things which are all motherhood statements, or is it actually going to have an impact on council decision making? And if it had, then synthetic grass wouldn't be on the agenda at all. And the property issues, of course, would have been dealt with in a way that actually assessed their overall long-term sustainability. The Development Control Plan, the LEP, these issues all require, those documents require revision to ensure that they do include sustainable requirements. The houses aren't being put up that just are going to be nightmares sustainability-wise in the future. Huge energy consumption, no water tanks, nothing to stop the degradation of our environment. So what will the impact of this committee be? And that's what my primary concern is. I certainly support it, but I have doubts about whether it can have the impact it should have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Cresswell? You raised your...
I was actually going to move the motion, but
Councillor Sanderson, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Armstrong. I take it from what you're saying that you would be like me and agree that the current sustainability action plan needs to be vastly expanded to take in what they refer to as scope 3 emissions. So you are considering all of your projects.
Completely agree that scope 3 emissions should be included in any sustainability plan. And there should be a thorough review of all council's documents, legislative documents and development control plans to ensure that there are considerations like that taken into account rather than just put it off into some little minor impact. It's not a minor impact. The council itself has said there's a climate emergency. So let's try and put it at an emergency level in terms of its impact and its scope, rather than just keeping these things as little separate issues that don't actually ever gel together on the question of sustainability. Scope 3 emissions is a classic example.
Are there any further questions of Mrs. Armstrong? Question or motion? Okay, thank you very much for your attendance. We appreciate the thoughts.
Thank you.
thank you.
Councillor Cresswell, you wish to move the motion? Yes. Which?
As per the recommendation, Mr. Mayor,
Do you wish to...
I would like to nominate, do you want me to stand up?
Yes, please.
I'd like to move the recommendation and nominate the existing 3 councillors from the working group to the committee, Councillor Sanderson, Councillor McLaughlin, who I checked with this afternoon, and myself. And I would nominate myself for chair of the committee, unless you... I also did just want to check that while 3 students have come forward to be youth representatives, that we're sure that that doesn't affect the quorum and that other schools would still be invited to attend. So whether that needs to somehow be slipped into the motion.
General Manager.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation is the following individuals be appointed to the Sustainability Advisory Committee, and listing those 6 individuals. And then a separate point 4 says we accept the nominations from youth representatives. So they're not included in the quorum of the committee. And of course, we'll continue to engage with the schools.
And then just one further change to the recommendation, if I could. The original suggestion was that there be, I think it was 8 community representatives on the committee, and some of the members of the working party did get a little confused and actually did want to be on this committee and missed the cut-off date to make submissions. So I don't know how we'd word it to try and keep those other 2 spaces open to later on consider those applications.
No.
All right, in that case, we'll leave it as it stands.
Are we able to co-opt people in the short term? This is 2 vacant spaces.
Through Mr. Mayor, if I could perhaps have a conversation with Councillor Cressoy to understand which 2, and we can bring a further report back next meeting rather than defer the establishment of the committee.
I think we'll go with it as it is then, and I'll take that last little question offline.
And Councillor Sanderson, did you second that motion? You did. Is there any further debate? If not, right of reply. There is no discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare that unanimous. That now takes us to 4.4. We have a series of speakers in relation to that. That's the Gladesville Reserve playing field. Oh, okay. Yes, we have somebody on Zoom. So are we able to accommodate that person, please? And that is this is Accompanying. That person won't come on. That's good. While we get Mrs. Eckerman online, we might jump to the next person so that we can keep the matter moving along. And if we get them online, they can come back in the appropriate time. So the next person on the list is Mrs. Vale. Vale with us. Oh, I'll just wait till everybody arrives. Mrs. Vale, you have 3 minutes, and please.
Nice, thank you. My name is Melanie Vale, and I'm a mother of 3 boys. My family has been part of the All Saints Club since 2012. Over the past 9 years, weekly soccer training and games have been a significant part of our family routine. I strongly support the synthetic field as the continuity of weekly training and weekly games provides a key platform for the children's growth and their love of sport. Continuity of play impacts on many levels. It provides team bonding and friendship, essential skills training, fitness, and the all-important keeping kids active. In a typical season, training sessions and games are cancelled on a number of occasions. This is due to the wet weather impact causing the playing fields to be closed. Often these cancellations come at the very last minute, and they cause much disappointment and disruption to both the children and the families. In the age of technology, it is a constant battle to keep our kids off devices and to keep our kids active. The opportunity for the All Saints Football Club to provide a field whereby training, games can be maintained throughout the entirety of the season is a great advantage for local families and promoting healthy and active kids. Is that time warning? The surface of the Gladesville Reserve has been questionable over the years, with very uneven playing surfaces, patches of dirt, patches of mud, and the sinkhole that's appeared in recent weeks. The provision of a level and constant surface would result in less injuries, less twisted ankles, twisted knees, trips and falls, which I think all parents would be very supportive. My children and I have also played in a summer soccer competition, of which we've had to travel outside of the local area to source a competition. A local competition during summer would be very welcome to Hunters Hill families. And again, it would keep and encourage our local children playing the game that they love, remaining fit and active throughout the whole year. We also have family friends that have got talented young soccer players, and they have to travel well outside of the area to join football academies. If the facilities at the Gladesville Reserve met the standards of a football academy, we would retain local families, keeping them local, and also encourage other families from other areas that would probably support local businesses while they're here. In summary, I just want to emphasise that the continuity of use of Gladesville Reserve throughout the course of the year has immeasurable benefit to the ongoing well-being and activity of the children of Hunters Hill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mrs. Vale? If not, thank you very much for your presentation. For those that are speaking tonight, I do apologise for that ding-donging. That seems to be something in the system. But when you've reached your 3 minutes, there'll be a ding-ding. So I
As opposed to a
apologise
ding
for
dong.
that. Sorry?
As opposed to a ding dong.
That's right, yeah. So, okay, so we now move to the next speaker is, you'll let me know when that person's available. So we move to Mr. Buckley. Are you present?
In the,
I was on the Zoom. Okay, could you please allow me access?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Great.
You'll have 3 minutes and you'll
No
get
problem. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name's Dan Buckley. I've lived in Hunters Hill for the last 10 years. Active member of the community with my son going to Hunters Hill Public School. Both of us do play for All Saints. I'm also a volunteer on the committee at All Saints. One of the reasons I chose Hunters Hill All Saints as a club for my son was because of this proposed facility. There aren't a lot of synthetic pitches around. Every other council has one. We don't, for some reason. I've played soccer my entire life. I've seen the benefits that this has for communities, for kids. The last speaker was right. It keeps kids off their computers, out of crime. It gives them something to do, active in our community, which as a father, I want nothing more for my son than to have the best facilities available. The current state of Gladesville Reserve is dangerous. We play there weekly. I train there 3 times a week. There's a big pothole. I've read the report. It would cost more money to fix Gladesville Reserve than to provide the synthetic pitch, which is fully funded. We've got so many beautiful grass ovals within Hunters Hill and Gladesville region. We do not have one synthetic pitch. You know, I think it's an opportunity for all of us to provide something new. I think failing to do this is failing the community. You know, I'd love nothing more than to grand final day, to go down to Gladesville Reserve and watch my son, you know, other kids. You know, at the moment, the last speaker again raised this point. At the moment, we have to travel to other councils, to other suburbs to play sport because they have the facilities that Hunters Hill Council haven't provided us. This is a fully funded project from the New South Wales government, and there is no reason why it shouldn't be endorsed. Thanks.
Any questions? If not, thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just a question.
Oh, questions.
No, off the speaker
Oh,
to
right.
the General Manager.
Yes.
Is it true that only a synthetic field is being is funding available for only a synthetic field, as the speaker just mentioned? Or
Madam General Manager.
Through Mr. Mayor, I believe that the club were active in seeking funding for an all-weather surface ahead of the last election, and as a result of that, the state member, as part of the election commitment, committed $2 million towards an improved surface, and that funding We haven't received that funding, but that funding is going to be made available to council. The intent of the funding is to improve the capacity or the playing load of the field to cater for the demand and the growth locally. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further questions? If not, we now move to the next speaker, which is Mr. Mahoney. Oh, is that one? Yes, Mr. Mahoney, please. 3 minutes, sir. And
Yep. Sure. Good evening. My name is Paul Marnie. I'm a resident of Henley, and my family and I are regular users of the Gladesville Reserve playing field. Gladesville Reserve playing field is a natural grass playing field that presently serves a wide range of community members for a range of activities, including general recreation and exercise, dog walking, cricket and football. That is, it is a community facility open to and used by all. The proposal is to replace the current grass surface with an artificial playing surface. Synthetic playing fields are not suitable for cricket, dog walking, general recreation or exercise. Consequently, the proposal would transform a community space into a single-use facility to be used by a single club during winter months and which is largely unsuitable for other activities at all other times. This is not in the interest of our broader community. In fact, there are significant concerns about the environmental impact of artificial playing surfaces, so much so that the New South Wales Planning Minister has called for a review of sustainable alternatives to synthetic grass. Any decision in favour of artificial grass cannot be made until the Planning Department reports on this matter. Notably, Hunters Hill Council has a stated objective of preserving and maintaining the unique natural environment of the local area. In February 2020, Hunters Hill Council adopted the declaration of a climate emergency, and in March 2021, only a month ago, endorsed a sustainability action plan, a core goal of which was to minimise waste. Council has acknowledged that human-induced climate change represents one of the greatest threats to humanity, and that councils must take action to reduce our impact on the environment. Further, Council has indicated that it would work to address minimising waste and implement urban heat mitigation practices. Installing a synthetic playing field, knowing that it will result in hundreds of cubic metres of landfill, is inconsistent with the sustainability practices endorsed by Council, and doing so would be environmentally unconscionable. Page 1 of the proposal, which is page 320 of the agenda, states, it is expected that the materials used for synthetic field will be 100% reused or repurposed. Page 10 of the proposal, which is page 329, states recycling facility for synthetic playing field is expected within 2 to 3 years. Of concern, these are unfounded assertions that are in stark contrast to the harsh reality of the matter. Artificial playing fields are not recyclable, and it has been shown that used playing fields end up as landfill. And in my written submissions, I've provided links to 2 articles from the US from 2019 and 2020 dealing with this matter, where you have the fallout from 30 or 40 years worth of AstroTurf fields now just contributing to landfill. Synthetic playing fields leach microplastics. Synthetic playing fields have been shown to be dangerously hot in summer, typically reaching temperatures in excess of 75 degrees. The retention of heat by artificial playing surfaces severely limits any use of the field during summer. And more importantly, a surface that stores and radiates such abnormal heat levels would have a devastating impact on the local flora and fauna. Contrary to one of the earlier submissions, synthetic surfaces have been shown to be more dangerous than natural turf, with a recent 2019 study out of the US from the University Hospitals indicating that participants are 58% more likely to sustain an injury during athletics.
Councillor Sanderson, all those in favour? Yes, carry. Thank you, sorry.
I don't have much more. But this report shows that participants are 50% more likely to sustain an injury during athletic activity on artificial turf. Of further concern is the ongoing capital cost to replace it. I understand that we're looking at costs in excess of $1 million to replace it in 7 to 10 years. The proposal indicates somewhat glibly that that would be covered by ground hire fees, but I'm not sure that All Saints have $100,000 per annum extra over and above the current ground hire fees to pay that. Most importantly, there is an alternative that would provide a workable outcome for all and which is consistent with Council's sustainability policies. We can upgrade Gladesville Reserve with an improved couch grass variety, such as AgriDark couch, with better drainage and irrigation, with alternative ecologically friendly fertilisers that would provide an improved playing surface for all sports over many years, whilst retaining access for all community members without endangering wildlife or the local environment.
Thank you. Okay, are there any questions? If not, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. We'll now move to Mrs. Jo Eckerman, who's online.
Make a suggestion. If we've got 22 speakers, that we stick to the 3 minutes.
That's council's decision.
Thanks. Well, I'm just saying we're not going to get through that well.
Well, the offer is there to extend if you wish to. Council will make that decision. Thank you. Could you please do your presentation?
Thank you, Council. My name is Joanne Eckerman and I'm a resident of Henley of 11 years with family history in this area going back over 150 years. Firstly, the community should have access to a variety of usable green spaces close to home. My family used this space daily. During lockdown, this space was full of life, full of our neighbourhood. Small groups kicking a footy, practicing cricket, learning to ride bikes, picnicking, throwing balls for their dogs. Every week, there are plenty of non-soccer users whose access and use of this space must be considered. Why should one set of interests for one club in one sport be allowed to dominate? All Saints Soccer Club has a lot of members and a very organised campaign. This does not mean that all other views should be shouted down. This oval is a community resource. This is a stealth privatisation of a public space via fences and ground fees. Secondly, consider the environmental impacts. To cover an enormous local green space in plastic is highly inconsistent with Council's own sustainability action plan and with the project for a Bedlam Bay swimming spot in the near future. We are still paying the price for bad decisions affecting our river in the past. Don't make more. AstroTurf is responsible for higher CO2 emissions and higher field temperatures on hot days, almost twice as hot as a grass playing field. There is scientific evidence of underlay substrates leaking into waterways, microplastic leaching, a loss of wildlife habitat, and significant environmental impacts on turf disposal in 10 years. The dismissal of these environmental concerns in the report lacks depth and lacks rigour. The environmental impact cannot be reduced to we'll do better underlay or there will be better disposal options in future for turf. Vague assurances are not robust environmental evidence. New South Wales Planning Minister Rob Stokes asked for an inquiry about AstroTurf's environmental impacts. Environmental groups have current court cases against councils for astroturfing impacts. Surely the risk of legal exposure is enough to make council take these impacts seriously. Thirdly, the funding is tight and council cannot afford any project overruns. This risk is more than just possible. Any overruns and there will be design compromises, and every design compromise is a direct hit on our local environment. This project has been presented to the community as a fait accompli. It's $2 million of free money, so it has to go ahead. Projects of this size should never be presented on such a one-sided basis. Your community objects, and I hope that you have ears enough to listen to us over just those with the loudest voices. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions? If not, thank you again, Mrs. Eckerman. We now move to the next speaker, who is Mr. Mahoney. We've done yours. Yeah, no, not a second time. We now move to one which is going to be read out. Mel, could you please read it out?
So this is Mr. Ron Borgard. I'm a full supporter of the installation of a synthetic field at Gladesville Reserve. As a member of the local football club, All Saints Hunters Hill Football Club, and therefore a regular user of the facility, I have a personal experience of the frustration and disappointment of being unable to train or play at the ground because of incremental weather, which would not happen with a synthetic surface. I'm also strongly in support of the proposal as the ground would be available to all local clubs and competitions, especially those designed to get local children playing sport all through the year, regardless of weather and conditions. I believe that council has an obligation to its residents and sporting clubs to improve the facility at Gladesville Reserve for the benefit of the entire community, especially given that the project has already been funded by the state government.
Thank you. We now move to the next speaker who is in person. That's Mrs. Nicholas. If not, we'll move to the next, which is again to be read out. It's Dr. Kwan.
Dr. John Kwan, thank you for the opportunity to address council for the proposed redevelopment of Gladesville Reserve. Having moved to this area 5 years ago, my family and I have become extensively involved as a part of all the community, from being president of the P&C at Boronia Park Public School to active members of the local football club. The proposal and funding approval to upgrade Gladesville Reserve and its facilities was received with much anticipation in March 2019 via the local state member Anthony Roberts. The creation of an all-weather synthetic ground for any sporting activity for community users in this district is essential. It will provide the only such ground in the LGA, in contrast to all surrounding LGAs, which have already provided these facilities. Maintain growth in the largest grassroots level sport in Australia, reduce long-term maintenance and associated costs with grass fields, replace and upgrade building facilities for all used by locals and the All Saints Hunters Hill Football Club, currently inadequate and poorly maintained. That this proposal remains unapproved is disappointing and frustrating, given its already funded commitment and wide community support. Councillors should be accountable to their local residents and obligated to approve this proposal for the wider benefits of their community.
Thank you. We now move to Mrs. Simone Concha. Would you like to give your presentation? 3 minutes and it'll be a ding, not a ding dong.
Thank you. I'm a resident of Henley and a proud long-term member of All Saints Soccer Club. Council is not in a position to approve the installation of a synthetic surface at Gladesville Reserve tonight because the process that Council has followed to publicly advertise this proposal has not been sound. Indeed, it's been highly questionable. Firstly, where is the funding deed that Council received from the state government in 2019? Have you seen it? No, I haven't either, and it's conspicuously missing from the 500-page agenda that you issued for this meeting. Everything, including the kitchen sink, is there, but the funding deed is not. In September last year, Henley resident Brooke Kepi and I asked council representatives Beck Ho, Susan Butler and Georgia Shields to explain the conditions of the deed, and they told us council couldn't find it. They also told us they would let us know when it was found, and we never heard back from them about that. This is important because member for Lane Cove, Anthony Roberts, told Brooke Kepi in December last year that the funding was for an upgrade to the sporting facilities at Gladesville Reserve. He explicitly told Brooke that it did not stipulate synthetic turf. He also told Brooke that council is required to perform community consultation to determine how to use that funding. This is inconsistent with the statements made by council that the grant is specific to a synthetic surface. If that is true, show us the funding deed that you received in 2019. Secondly, I'm unaware of council having formally called for submissions in keeping with New South Wales planning legislation for this proposed development. An online survey and pop-up tent down at the reserve do not replace council's obligation to advertise this development formally in keeping with the statutory requirements. Submissions allow the whole community, not just selected stakeholders, to say what they really think. Instead, you only gave us the opportunity to answer the narrow questions you put to us, which were designed to get the answers that you wanted. And this goes to my third point. It doesn't matter how many engagement channels you opened if the engagement you undertook was not done in good faith to begin with. The consultation has been engineered to get the result that you wanted, and this is not true consultation. For example, at your pop-up tent, you asked participants if they supported the upgrade of the reserve, including the synthetic surface. Well, I do support the upgrade of the reserve, but I don't support a synthetic surface. There was no meaningful option for me to express an alternative view. And sadly, it's a matter of record that Brooke and I reached out to council representatives repeatedly over a period of 8 months, asking valid questions about process and consultation that have been answered late or not answered meaningfully at all. You are not in a position to approve this development. This process has been dubious and disingenuous from beginning to end, not to mention completely untransparent. Don't kid yourselves.
Councillor Miles, Councillor Sanderson, all those in favour, against, declare carried. Thank you. Sorry for
Thank you. Don't kid yourselves. Many people in this community feel this way about all of the items on your agenda tonight, and that's a problem for you as much as it is for us.
Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Miles, but stay.
Just through you to the General Manager, I guess, we're not talking about approving a development consent tonight. That is presumably a stage in the next stage in the process. My understanding is tonight is to essentially endorse what's in the recommendation, which is to move ahead with that process. Could you just elaborate on that?
Madam General Manager, could you
Through
answer the
you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight's about council deciding whether or not it wishes to proceed with an all-weather surface, synthetic surface. We don't, the speaker made mention of a funding deed. We don't have a deed. So we've been offered the funding, as I mentioned before. We don't have the funding in the bank. We don't have a signed deed. The council needs to decide what it wishes to, if it wishes to accept the grant or not, and does it wish to proceed with the synthetic or all-weather surface. We need that decision before we can move forward. I can ask the Director of Development to talk about the statutory process.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you. The proposal is a replacement of grass to synthetic. Its use and purpose is the same. So it's basically, if it falls under the planning, plan of management, and it says in the plan of management that the site is used for the same use and purpose, like active use, and for the purpose of a playing field, it's just replacing the grass to synthetic. So it's basically falls under the statutory requirements of the plan of management, which in turn does not require any sort of consent. It's development without requirement of consent under the state policy of infrastructure. So State Environmental Planning Policy Infrastructure 2007 carries that clause where it says that the proposed work is development that is permitted without consent. So that's a statutory requirement under the state policy.
If there were any changes to the built form.
Oh, definitely. Most definitely.
Okay, are there any further questions? I've got not of you. Thank you very much for your presentation. I've got a question of the General Manager that flows from that presentation. Why hasn't the government provided us with a deed? I would have thought it'd be important for us to find out what the purpose and scope and boundaries of the funding are before we move forward. Why haven't they been able to provide that?
Through Mr. Mayor, we have been offered $2 million towards the upgrade of Gladesville Reserve. The council needs to make a decision if it wishes to proceed with a synthetic or all-weather surface.
Okay, so that's not really, but that's okay. Are there any, well, is there any further discussion? No, we're up to further speakers. We've got quite a lot today. Up to 38, Mr. Buckley.
Chris.
Okay. That's to be read out. Could you please read out Mr. Buckley's mission?
I am a resident of Dick Street, Henley. active in the Henley community as a volunteer, and I care greatly for the heritage and future of our suburb. I've reviewed all the documentation supplied by council and participated in the community comment phase. On Friday, at extremely short notice, residents received notice that council will tonight decide whether to commit to replacement of natural grass with synthetic turf, basically in support of one sport, and several limited options for the use of the playing field for other sports and recreational activities. My greatest concern, already widely expressed by other members of the local community, is that the synthetic surface will have an adverse, long-term, cumulative environmental impact. Essentially, the report to council suggests that the community is misinformed and that the proposal will have a favourable environmental impact. There is a good reason to disagree, given the council's policy and commitment to sustainability. This assessment is just as important as economics considerations or the need to accommodate the growing demand for healthy outdoor activity. The grounds for my continued concern are microplastics and other non-natural substances from rainwater discharge from the site will accumulate in the river and harbour waters and has happened in the past with industrial pollution. The selection of data source in support of the proposal is misleading. For example, the Football New South Wales Grass Field Maintenance Guide advises that the carrying capacity of well-mained couch is 35 hours per week, whereas the report to council only suggests 25 to 28. Also, the SIP survey that closed 9th of November produced a far stronger community reaction against synthetic grass than that reported in the business case, which referred only to the earlier August-September survey. The option to divert football training hours to Bedlam Bay Oval and non-existing grass surface does not appear to have been addressed, and that would dramatically reduce Gladesville Reserve loading. Funding for both the installation phase and ongoing maintenance is tight, and council has said it cannot cover overruns. This risk is rated possible in the business case and could compromise environmental protections. The New South Wales Planning Minister has asked his department to investigate sustainable alternatives to synthetic grass. Council is preempting the result of this study. More broadly, the report to council acknowledged some level of community obligation. This underplays the concern. 2/3 of those who responded to the matter in November SIP survey favoured the installation of synthetic grass. However, all but 3 of the respondents were members of the All Saints Hunters Hill Football Club, and it can be reasonably assumed that this was organised response to the survey. The 1/3 that objected were not organised groups, and the breadth of concern by Henley residents should not be underestimated or dismissed. Put another way, one organisation marshalling support for its members should not be unreasonably influenced on council's decision in this matter at the expense of those who live at Henley.
Thank you. Is Mr. Junior online? Okay, we now move to another presentation to be read.
Aditya Ganesh said, wonderful initiative which brings world-class facilities to the coveted Inner West and promotes community connectedness. And then Catherine Keys has also written a statement. I read through the report that the council staff have submitted.
Another presentation to be read.
Aditya Ganesh said, wonderful initiative. Apologies. Sorry. I read through the report that the council staff have submitted for consideration at the council meeting on Monday, the 19th of April. I cannot see the following information in the attached appendices. Do you have any data which outlines the number of injuries sustained at Gladesville Reserve due to the state of the natural grass ground, poor maintenance? Also, have any injured players at Gladesville Reserve sued Hunters Hill Council? I'm aware of some serious knee injuries across various clubs with ambulances being called. Can you provide such data showing numbers each year? And what the council has done to mitigate the poor nature of grass condition of the Gladesville Reserve during the winter months, in particular drought years? Can you please advise the projected budget for the Gladesville natural grass ground maintenance year on year to ensure injury risk is mitigated? Interestingly, there are a number of scholarly articles which show we have found no evidence that playing matches or training on artificial turf raises the risk of soccer players sustaining injury. In fact, the evidence suggests that the risk of some injuries and some subgroups might be even lower. However, until more is known about issues such as altered playing styles affect injury incidents, it is difficult to make firm conclusions regarding direct or indirect role of artificial turf in player safety. What can be argued is that artificial surfaces provide a more consistent playing surface than natural grasses, free from ruts and divots, which could affect injury risk. Most of the studies examined focused on teams competing at a high level, so it is likely that natural grass surfaces were of a high quality, not local grounds in the middle of winter. Traditionally, physical characteristics of artificial turf and friction resistance at the shoe surface interface have given rise to suggest of greater injury risk on artificial turf. However, laboratory experiments yield conflicting results regarding this idea.
Thank you. That brings us to our next person, Mr. who's on Zoom. Is he available? Good evening. Could you please confine, is he unmuted? Could you unmute, please? Thank you. Confine your presentation to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Ristic. I'm the Manager, Government Relations, Funding and Infrastructure at Football New South Wales. I'm here this evening to speak in favour of the synthetic field being built at Gladesville Reserve. The installation of synthetic fields by many sports, local governments and schools in Australia has grown significantly in the last 2 decades. These synthetic fields complement natural turf fields that are already in existence across the sporting network. The key football codes in Australia have all embraced synthetic sports surface technology for their community clubs and some for their elite competitions. Their aim is simply to provide more opportunities for communities to play sport and appreciate the synthetic sports fields is one way of creating significant additional playing hours in many areas where fields are short in demand. Football has listened to the issues raised by local residents. Both are in favour of the new field and the people who are concerned about the impact of the community and would like to offer these key aspects for consideration as we commend Council's commitment in investing in the health and well-being of the community and its environment. 1, the community. The investment in Gladesville Reserve will greatly assist in meeting the large demand that football already has in the Hunters Hill LGA. Currently, 5.7% of the Hunters Hill LGA participate in football. This is well above the state average of 3.7%. In addition, 33% of children aged 5 to 9 that live in Hunters Hill Council are registered football participants. All Saints Hunters Hill FC is the 7th largest club in the North West Sydney Football Association. Gladesville Reserve will also be used during the day by local schools, in particular Riverside Girls High School, and the local community who will use them daily for exercise and a recreational kick around for families. We are proud that 98% of all football fields are open to the community during the times not used by schools, clubs and groups across the whole of New South Wales. And we see this as being a strong asset to your community. 2, environmental sustainability. We commend council for being committed to balancing the environmental considerations with the demand by the community to be more active. The approach that council has highlighted in your business case identifies that the embracement of environmental responsibility is strong, with the adoption of the majority of the synthetic field being made from recycled material, pavement-based shock pad and sand dress carpet, and the fact it can now all be recycled at the end of life or indeed extend its life, which is a great outcome for the community and the environment. This outcome, combined with the work that council has done with our technical consultant, will reduce the microplastics to next to zero and will be leading the world in the design of new fields. 3, economic sustainability. The business case shows the economic value to council from the generous support from the state government and the member for Lane Cove, Mr. Anthony Roberts, with the operational cost being reduced significantly from what is being spent currently, while also doubling the level of playing hours. Football New South Wales fully supports the installation of a synthetic field at Gladesville Reserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? If not, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. It's appreciated.
Thank you.
We now move to the next speaker. Yes. Not present or no? Okay, so we now move on to Miss Adams. Yeah, Miss Adams. Are you here this evening? No. Okay. Keep moving. This one's to be read out by Mr. Chen.
Mr. Simon Chen. I am supporting the installation of synthetic field at Gladesville Reserve. As a member of the local football club, All Saints Hunters Hill Football Club, and therefore a regular user of the facility, I have personal experience of the frustration and disappointment of being unable to train and play at the ground because of incremental weather, which would not have happened with a synthetic surface. I'm also strongly in support of the proposal, as the ground would be available to all local clubs and competitions, especially those designed to get local children playing sport all through the year, regardless of the weather or conditions. I believe that council has an obligation to its residents and supporting clubs to upgrade the facility at Gladesville Reserve, especially given that the project has already been funded by state government.
Thank you. That now brings us to another person who's joining by Zoom at the present, which is Mr. Chamberlain. We're just trying to unmute you, Mr. Chamberlain. Yes, okay, thank you. Could you please proceed? Mr. Chamberlain, could you please disconnect the Sorry about that.
Can you hear me?
We can now. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Okay, let's have a look.
Yes, okay, thank you. Proceed.
So can you, okay, cool.
You need to mute Mr. Chamberlain.
Can you hear me?
You can now. Thank you.
Oh, cool, thank you. So yeah, I've been at,
Yes, we can hear you.
okay, so I've been a member of All Saints Hunters Hill for 16.
Yes, we can. Please proceed. You need to mute YouTube if we're going to be able to hear you.
I think there's a bit of an echo and so okay, cool.
You need to mute YouTube. Okay. Yes, we might mute you and give you a call to see if we can sort out that technical problem and come back to you, if that's okay. Thank you.
Someone say you need teenager.
We now need to move to another one to be read, which is from Mr. Father Nelson.
Good evening. I write in support of the installation of a synthetic pitch at Gladesville Reserve. The business case clearly states the numerous benefits that the council and community will reap from the investment. When you consider the perilous financial position of the council, turning away a state government grant for $2 million that will both reduce expenditure and increase revenue streams is nonsensical. Without this facility, who else does Hunters Hill Council propose to ensure the upkeep and viability of its sporting grounds to meet the needs of its residents? For those against the proposal, I'd like you to consider that in refusing to proceed with this project, you are reducing the availability of suitable sporting grounds for organised sports in a time when physical activity and community connections are needed more than ever. Please look at the numbers and make your decision based on common sense and on what will provide the best outcome for the council and its residents. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just have to ask a question off that.
Yes. I'm not quite sure how we answer it unless it's through the staff.
To you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Whoever you want to direct it to. Are we turning away a $2 million grant if we don't lay a synthetic playing field? I just don't feel like I'm getting a straight up answer on.
It's my belief we're not, but Madam General Manager, could you please advise?
Mr. Mayor, I ask that we work through the speakers, and then I'll ask Susan Butler, who's our parks planner, to talk through where the funding is actually up to, because Susan's been dealing with both the Office of Sport as the funding provider and has also sought clarification from the Department of Planning, which some of the speakers have mentioned tonight about concern.
Thank you. So we'll deal with that. Yes, Councillor Miles.
For clarification, I was there at the original announcement of this by Anthony Roberts, and it was specifically for a synthetic surface. That was the announcement that was made at the time in 2017, and what has been subsequently worked through.
Any further quick? No. Okay. Well, we'll now move to the next speaker, who is Mr. Todd Percy, and that is via Zoom. Oh. No, not there. Okay. So we now move. You'll let me know when we can go back to the Mr. Chamberlain. To Mr. Butcher, are you present? No. Mr. Torreson. Oh, that's the Zoom. Is that correct?
No.
No. Okay, not there. Stochik.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. 3 minutes, sir.
Good.
Go
So
ahead.
good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members and fellow constituents. My name is Alex Stochik of Ryde Road, Hunters Hill, and a member of the successful men's over 35s 4th Division All Saints Hunters Hill Football Club. You may remember us as a bunch of local dads who won the premiership and grand final, having never previously met before, and made our local newspaper for our community spirit. I appreciate your time, and it's an honour to make a statement in support of the upgrade of Gladesville Reserve with the installation of a world-leading, multi-use, all-weather surface. So over the past year and a year and a half, and as a new member to the club, it has been incredible to feel a part of and see how the local community has built and grown so quickly in a short amount of time. The most joyous moments have been seeing the kids play with their friends, the smiles on their faces on a week-to-week basis, weather permitting, of course. Being a leading council that you are, a new opportunity has presented itself for the community to grow and to be the leading example for our family community. With a state government grant on offer, which we are all grateful for, the kids now have the opportunity to play uninterrupted year-round with their friends in all varieties of sports and all varieties of activities. And it would be remiss to deny them the chance to forge lifelong relationships. All we're asking for is one ground in the whole district to be built and maintained to an exemplary standard. I'd like to thank you again for your time and look forward to supporting this fantastic initiative and seeing the community of kids and families continue to grow and flourish with the support of my council. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the councillors? No, thank you very much for your time this evening. We now move to Mr. Redwin.
Yeah. I strongly support council endorsing the development of an all-weather playing surface at Gladesville Reserve. This will allow our children, youth and adults to train and play football more frequently than can occur currently. It will be a better surface so that fewer people are likely to sustain injuries. The lighting will make it safer at night. It will cost less per annum to maintain than the current turf. The funding is already in place. The environmental concerns are manageable and in this case are outweighed by the health benefits of increased activity for our residents. I urge the councillors to support the provision of all-weather synthetic.
Thank you. The next person, Ms.
Tony is there.
Is she there? Okay, thank you. Could you please connect?
Hello, Tony Wynn.
Yeah, good evening.
Great.
See,
Good evening,
you'll have
Councillor.
3 minutes, so thank you.
I will be quick. I will be under 3. So my name is Tony Wynn, a resident of Hunters Hill for 6 years, whose son is an active young sportsman, one of many in our area. I wish to voice my support for the all-weather field at Gladesville Reserve. Firstly, I note that the proposed all-weather field, as already mentioned, is funded, and that funding of $2 million from New South Wales Government is welcome. But secondly, my support is not for a particular sporting club. I'm not a member of All Saints. My son was a member some years ago, and he often missed out on games. My support is for young sports people who need to play their sport every week, regardless of weather. The health and fitness has been mentioned and the community connectedness that weekly sport brings. It is important, and I emphasise the connectedness of community that comes with regular weekly activity rather than a field that is often closed. So we do need reliable playing fields and it's growing, that need. The current grass field is too often unplayable as it's either drenched from rain or a dust bowl in the dry. After playing sports that use grass fields in Hunters Hill Council area, as well as artificial fields in areas such as Lane Cove and St Leonard's, it's a constant source of relief to the players when they know they're playing games on an all-weather field when it's pouring with rain or in very dry weather. They absolutely think, first question, oh my God, is it going to be washed out? Will the oval be closed? Oh, phew, it's an all-weather field, thank heavens. So I appreciate that there's been understandably strong comments made against the use of plastic glass. However, I feel the use of recycled materials in the artificial option, such as the use of rubber crumb made from old car tyres and laid on recycled road base, should counterbalance those concerns. And we also need to consider the offset of the ongoing environmental cost of maintaining a grass field through irrigation, fertiliser and fertiliser runoff into bushland, which is common. So there is cost in maintaining natural grass environmentally as well. Thank you for listening to my statement.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions?
No.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. We now move to the next speaker, who is to be read out. Do you have that one?
This is Mrs. Nicole Plengen, and I would like to strongly speak in favour for the already fully funded synthetic grass proposal for Gladesville Reserve.
That's it. Okay. We now move to the next speaker, who's here possibly, Mr. McLeod. Thank you. 3 minutes. Thank you, sir.
All right, I will try and keep within 3. So first of all, I am the president of All Saints Hunters Hill. So I kind of stand here kind of representing the vast majority of our current 900 members. Probably a bit of a backstory. 2017 was when Paul Manton, our previous president, kind of first kind of had discussions with Anthony Roberts about the grant, and then that came through in 2019. Unfortunately, a few months after Paul passed away. I actually spoke with Anthony Roberts today just to get some clarity around the grant, which has been a bit of a question going around the room. So Anthony is very much saying it is for the upgrade of Gladesville Reserve, with the intention that from an All Saints perspective, that was for a synthetic pitch. I don't know if that clarifies it, but I'll take questions if you have any. Now, it's also important to note, All Saints Hunters Hill have been around for 75 years. Next year is our 75th anniversary. We're a club that over the last probably 5-6 years has grown significantly. So based in 2017, when we said we needed a synthetic field, it's actually the need has got bigger and bigger every year up until this year. So for me, the report covers a number of key benefits. So obviously the first one around a synthetic field and how it can sustain significantly higher use, generally 60 hours a week versus 20 to 30 hours a week on the grass field. If you look at the current usage of All Saints alone, not taking into account the school, etc., we already kind of use it more than what a replacement grass field would actually cope with. So that would easily, any replacement grass field would be deteriorate very quickly. So there's already been talks about player safety and injuries. Most of the research that I've done has shown that comparing a high quality football field, such as professional play on, to a synthetic field, the number of injuries on a synthetic field is marginally smaller. You then add in the fact that you've got Gladesville Reserve, which currently has, as people have mentioned, it's got a sinkhole in one corner. It's currently got a sand pit in the middle of the field, the length of a long jump. That's just asking for more injuries. And I know over the last couple of years, there have been significant injuries during game time. As mentioned, it provides a consistent and safe surface all year round. So this very much, what this allows for, and it's covering the business case about the additional revenue opportunities of a summer soccer competition, which All Saints would like to run, and that can actually create us some revenue, which will offset the additional cost of hiring a synthetic field. And also from speaking with football academies, they would be very keen to use Gladesville Reserve as a base if it's a synthetic field. If it's a grass field, it's not something that the ones I've spoken to would be interested in. We've talked about the lower maintenance cost in synthetic fields, and we've talked about the reduction in the amount of cancellations due to poor weather.
A motion to extend, Councillor Miles and Councillor Collins. All those
Thank you.
in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously.
Yep. So we know in the recent surveys that have been conducted through the council that probably it was like a 5-2 in favour of a synthetic field. I think that's important to take into account when we talk about the community feedback. I do note the environmental concerns, and I would defer back to Daniel Ristic from Football New South Wales, because he's way more of an expert in this than me. But I do note that some of the infills that are used can be organic materials such as cork, and there's examples nearby at Christie Park in Macquarie, at ELS Hall, where the cork infill is used. And I've personally played on both those fields, and the level of the field, level of the football, well, maybe not the level of the football, but it's
Sorry, please continue. Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
So I'm just trying to say that cork infill is a very good solution. From the whole of life, I know people mentioned about the recycling. I know that currently technology exists, for example, in Denmark for a company called Rematch, for example, where 99% of the synthetic fuel can be recycled. And I know that technology may not exist currently in Australia, but in 10 to 15 years' time, I would fully expect that technology to be not just in Australia, but everywhere else around the world. But obviously can't promise that. So then, to me, part of the vision for me is for All Saints is that, as I say, we're a club of 75 years. We have 900 plus members growing. Is Saturdays would be the under 6 would start at Gladesville. They'd be there throughout the day as older players play from the under 7s through to the over 45s. Saturdays would be for the mixed. Sundays would be for the women's competition. It would link in very nicely with the Henley Reserve concept plans, going down after a game to Henley Bowling Club, if that's been I know a cafe or something like that, hanging out there, making use of the skate park, the netball courts, all that kind of stuff. So in conclusion, like from a community perspective and standing here as president of All Saints, I very much support the report.
Thank you. Is there any questions?
Sure.
Councillor Miles.
You mentioned, and obviously this would potentially allow you to run a full summer comp as well, and you're confident there's the demand for that.
Very much so, because I know a number of our members currently either go to Blackman Park, which is a synthetic pitch, because the appeal for that one is, again, they know that if Tuesday night it will be on. I know there's previously been, well, there still is a competition run at Pidding Park, and there's been a big shift from Pidding Park to Blackman Park because of the surface.
Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I'm not aware of where your competition takes you, but have you ever played on Middlehead Oval?
No, I don't know where Middlehead is. So.
Okay, all right.
Mossman.
It's in Mossman. It's well, it's just on Middlehead. It's just an example of I would have thought first class natural turf pitch.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a football traditionalist, and I would love a grass pitch, right? Unfortunately, the demand, as we've said, we'll be using 50, 60 hours a week, which then means that there'll be a nice grass pitch for a week or two, and then it'll be chewed up by over demand. If we had the luxury of four grass pitches next to each other, we could rest one of them, great, but I live in Hunters Hill with limited open space.
Oh, I ask a question. You say you want to run a summer competition. Is that oval used for cricket or not?
Yes, so the current usage of cricket is it's on a Saturday, and I believe 1 hour a week it's hired out. So my personal preference would be, and this is coming from a dad who's got a son who's mad about cricket, much to my unhappiness, is that the best use of this facility, in my opinion, obviously I'm biased with coming from a football background, that this would be a dedicated soccer field, which would bring in the academy, would bring in the summer soccer competition, and would give it basically an all-round use.
That displays cricket. Yes. Councillor Cressler? Yeah.
My question was about summer cricket, the cricket as well. So you've answered that. Thank you.
No further questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. Most appreciated. That now, I think, is there any further? All right, Mr. Clayton. You present? Yes, thank you.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Michael Clayton. I've been a volunteer at All Saints Football Club for 10 years. I've been the registrar for 2 years. I've also voted Green for the last 30 years, even when it wasn't trendy. I've also taught ethics at Hunters Hill Public School for 7 years. A fine school, one that just installed a synthetic playground. So I'll talk to you for the next 2.5 minutes about how I can bring those three things together, being a registrar and an ethics teacher and a volunteer and a Green. So some fast stats. All Saints has 915 registered players, coaches and managers. I printed out the stat before I came here at 5 o'clock. If anybody needs confirmation of that, I've got it here with me tonight. We've had an increase of 200 players, coaches and managers in the last 2 years. An increase of 200 in the last 2 years. We are the largest user of Gladesville Reserve by a factor of 10s and 20s to 1. The idea for the funding grant was to say, how can we best make use of Gladesville Reserve? I would humbly submit to you that the best way to make use of Gladesville Reserve is to look at the largest user of Gladesville Reserve and ask us what we want. I spend hundreds of hours each year dealing with members of our football club. Overwhelmingly, they say they want a synthetic pitch. Overwhelmingly. Now, we do have one or two who have objected to the process, and we do have one or two who have got environmental concerns. But I can absolutely assure councillors, the vast majority of our 915 members are crying out for a synthetic field at Gladesville. We're actually the 7th largest club in the association. We've got twice as many players as the average club in the North West Sydney Football Association. Little Hunters Hill, who would have thought? We're bigger than Gladesville Sharks, we're bigger than Gladesville Ravens, we're bigger than Putney, and we are bigger than North Ryde Football Club. They are all of our surrounding clubs. We are the biggest, and it surprises a lot of people. I'm sure it surprised a lot of people in the room tonight. We're actually nearly an entire local council ward in our own right, because we have 1 in 3 local residents with a direct association to All Saints. And yet we have some of the worst facilities and the worst pitches in North West Sydney Football Association. We've actually got a really poor name amongst the association because our playing fields are so poor. When it doesn't rain, the fields turn to dust and die. When it does rain, the fields turn to mud, and they can be closed for multiple weeks. As stated in the report, Gladesville Reserve is currently vastly overplayed. It is vastly overplayed. The report clearly states that a new synthetic pitch will double the capacity for play over a grass pitch. There is no plan B. There is no plan B to address the overuse of the fields in Hunters Hill Council.
Councillor Miles, Councillor Collins, all in favour? Yes. My apologies.
So, as a Greens voter of over 30 years, I can advise council, I care deeply about the environment, and I know that with climate change, things are set to get worse. They will get worse for the challenges in maintaining grass fields. I can also say that there will be environmental wins with a synthetic field. No diesel tractors for mowing, no fertiliser required, no watering required in droughts, no dead fields that need replacing. Cork or recycled rubber can be used, and there can be containment barriers put in place. These are all items which are identified in the expert report. I'm someone who's actually concerned about mining, but I happen to use a smartphone, and that smartphone has the minerals and the precious metals that mining produces. I'd love to drive an electric car, but I don't have funds, neither does council. I too am concerned that Australia is behind Europe in recycling capacity for synthetic fields. However, they don't need replacing for 15 years. I'm wrapping up. Let's not let perfect get in the way of the greatest good. And so to my smart and funny ethics kids at Hunters Hill Public School, what would they have to say about the pros and cons of synthetic versus grass? They would state lots of opinions. We've heard lots of opinions tonight, but that's what they are, they're opinions. Why is one better and one worse? Then those kids would ask to be provided with reasons for their opinions. Then we would examine how strong their reasons were. Finally, we would discuss whether there were any viable alternatives. And then we would come to a position. This should be the process for councillors tonight. I could state an opinion that more kids playing more football would generate more CO2, which would make climate change worse. but it's not a very strong reason to stop the synthetic field going ahead. So some councillors may hold a concern about infill. They may hold concerns about recycling in 15 years, but both are solvable issues. And most importantly, unless you have a viable alternative to address the massive overuse of the existing fields, it would be criminal to stop the synthetic field going ahead. There is no plan B. So in summary, I would say, please listen to the largest user of Gladesville Reserve. We are the largest organised community group in Hunters Hill. We ask you to accept the recommendation of your council officers, use the $2 million state government funding, build the synthetic pitch, and support a home for all saints as we celebrate 75 years in Hunters Hill. Thank you.
Are there any questions? If not, thank you very much for your time this evening, Mr. Clayton. We now go back to Mr. Chamberlain, is that correct? Now made a connection. Good evening, Mr. Chamberlain. Can you hear us? What's going to happen? Right. Well, in the interest of moving forward, we've heard a lot of support speeches tonight, and I assume that was another one. We have one more. Okay. Mrs. Armstrong, would you like to address council? 3 minutes.
This is about the money. It's about the money. This is the tail wagging the dog. All Saints put up the application for the grant. So what's the grant about? It's about All Saints' interests. It's about creating a home ground, which they very much want, for football. This is a community resource. It's not a home ground for anybody, nor is Boronia Park a home ground for Hunters Hill Rugby Club. There should be no home grounds for any sport. Ravens doesn't have a home ground. My son went to Silverwater and trained over there because there was no home ground when he was with Ravens. The solution, the plan B, is to go somewhere else. All credit to Ms. Butler. I'm sure she's done a great job within her ability, given the time and so forth, but this requires an EIS. I know there's no legal requirement for one, but this is a significant long-term environmental contamination with runoff down into the bay. Once done, lost forever. You can't bring back those contaminants. You can't stop that leaching down into the bay. This is a matter which this report has not been able to address, and there are many general statements in this report which are just not justifiable. The figures about the 33% of kids playing football are just not supported. I don't see any mathematics justifying that. But statements such as many sports are currently using or are moving to using synthetic surfaces, well, that's a litigation nightmare about to happen. The litigation is a case before the Land Environment Court, which is arguing about whether this should happen. I mean, this is not something that we should just be leaping into. And the recommendation is that it be endorsed. Let's not quibble. This is about endorsing this process of putting up this synthetic grass field, which will permanently change the ecology of that whole area, which is a community resource, but it's going to be fenced off just for the All Saints Rugby Club. I support the speaker who said this is a stealth privatisation of this land for this club. It should not happen. There are speakers who are concerned about inability to use the land for their own purposes. Public schools nearby, they use it. Riverside Girls, what's their view about it? Do they want to have fake turfs? Who's been consulted? There's not an adequate process gone through with this report to give us any reassurance that this is the right outcome. The council should be endorsing this going forward. We need something similar to an EIS if there hasn't actually been one. We need the facts. There's been a lot of talk about how there's assertions. Every speaker makes assertions. I can make assertions too about what I've read about the Sydney Morning Herald article about the litigation going on about the runoff into the increased runoff from the rubber infill, and the fact that you can't solve that problem with
Councillor Sanderson, Councillor Miles.
you can't solve that problem. Thank you. You can't solve that problem with sand that increases all kinds of problems. Look, ambient heat created by this thing alone is going to change the whole heat island effect within an area. The school had to put more air conditioning in. You know, who's thought about the long-term consequences of what this really means in terms of hot days in summer and the surrounding suburbs? There's all kinds of issues that have not been addressed in this report. It's inadequate as it stands. The tail's wagging the dog. All Saints Club does not own the land. It should not be allowed to call it a home field. It's a community resource. So I have grave concerns about whether this is an adequate basis for going forward with this proposal.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you, Mrs. Armstrong. Appreciate it. We now can go back to Mr. Chamberlain. Is that possible? I think, is he connected? No. No, he's not. So we might have to extend our apologies to him. But I think we've heard a large number of speakers in support, and that now concludes our presentations. Councillor Miles.
I'd like to move the recommendation to report with a small amendment that in point 5 that it read, council endorse the upgrade of the existing playing field at Gladesville Reserve with an all-weather and in brackets synthetic surface.
Second. Councillor Collins is seconded. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
I do. I was at the some of those early discussions with Paul Manton. I was at the subsequent announcement by Anthony Roberts, and the intention was always to provide a all-weather surface synthetic field at Gladesville Reserve for the All Saints Soccer Club. It was intended to be the only synthetic surface that Hunters Hill Council had ever built at a time when Lane Cove, Ryde Council, North Sydney Council, and almost every other major metropolitan council in Sydney was building synthetic surfaces for their sporting groups. We've heard a lot of speakers in support tonight. We've heard a lot of the pros and cons. Football New South Wales has provided us with a number of options that should allay the environmental concerns about the subsurface and the caulking of the undercroft of the field. We've heard about the recyclability of the surface and what's happening in Europe, where soccer is probably played more abundantly and they have more fields. Well, until we have enough fields being played on that are synthetic fields, we're not going to get a facility dedicated to recycling. We're moving towards that end goal. UNSW is excited about the opportunity of working on that project. And that's something that Hunters Hill Council has facilitated. So we may, in approving the use of a synthetic surface, lead the way in making sure that these surfaces are recycled across metropolitan Sydney or across metropolitan Sydney and Melbourne. The facts are these. We have no synthetic surface in Hunters Hill. We have a field that is woefully underutilised because of its makeup and because the demand for soccer, particularly in Hunters Hill, is that high that we don't have the capacity to rest the fields long enough to allow them to recover. It's either a dust bowl and absolutely rock solid, or it is unmanageably muddy and can't be used for weeks at a time. That's not the community. That's not the council providing the community the best use of that facility. The park is for multiple users. Okay, cricket. The juniors cricket do use that facility in their on season, but only for juniors. And the juniors should be moved to the more appropriate pitches at Bedlam Bay or a Buffalo Creek Reserve, something that I believe is already, that we're already discussing with them. My understanding is that Riverside Girls is in support of the use of a synthetic surface at Gladesville Reserve because of the exact reasons that the Huntersville, that the All Saints Soccer Club are. Because the surface as it is either unusable or prone to injury. We've got the state government having provided the capacity for us to upgrade this facility. It's something that the club wants. It's something that in every iteration of the plans of management and the surveys that we've done and the feedback that we sought when we went down and had the door stop down at Henley, the vast majority in every single one of those cases wanted this synthetic surface to proceed. So as has been said here tonight, it would be irresponsible of us, given the capacity and the funding and the need, not to provide this facility for the club and the community.
Any speakers against? Councillor Sanderson.
I do not wish to speak against at this time. I'd like to foreshadow an alternate motion.
Yes, you
it was sent through electronically at 3 minutes past 5. So the general management take it should have it. The alternate motion is that the report be received and noted. Council to refer the matter to the next meeting with the Sustainability Advisory Committee for ongoing review and advice. 3, that council seek the advice of consultants such as Ag Enviro Solutions to prepare an alternate proposal and costings to upgrade the playing field at Gladesville Reserve, including soil remediation, a well-designed drainage system, stormwater collection for reuse on site, levelling, irrigation, and the installation of the best suited natural turf. 4, that a revised business case be brought back to council, which will, among other things, include A, comparative costings for the installation of a high quality natural turf playing surface and artificial turf. B, costings for ancillary items common to both natural and artificial turf proposals, such as improved high efficiency sports lighting and paths. D, proposals as to how the savings in grant funding by installing natural turf can be utilised, such as upgrading change facilities, storage, hedges to reduce fall loss, and seeding. D, assessment of the final or assessment of financial risks of insufficient commercial rate ground hire to fund the sinking fund, and the future risk of site remediation should artificial turf sports fields become unviable. F, a comparative environmental assessment, including assessment of carbon sink capacity of natural turf with the carbon emissions of the artificial turf proposal over its full life cycle. And then 5, the council arrange with Mosman Council a site visit for councillors and others to Middlehead Oval to inspect a high quality natural turf playing surface.
Is there a seconder to that motion?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Councillor Cresswell. Well, no, sorry, that's a foreshadow motion. So we're dealing with the motion before us. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Councillor.
Yes. Look, basically, the situation we're in is that we don't have enough playing surfaces in Hunters Hill to cater for the growing soccer players. We've just heard how many players we have that are utilising facilities. We have an obligation as council to provide those recreation sporting facilities, and we're not doing that. So we're not meeting our obligation to the community to provide those facilities. We know that grass would ideally be a better surface, but the problem is that we don't have enough so that we can rest ovals and keep it going. So whilst it is a better surface to play on, the usage is becoming so high that it's just not viable. So grass will never be able to cater for the demands of soccer in Hunters Hill. This is going around all metro areas. We don't have enough playing fields. When I was Vice President of NESROC, one of the outcomes of that was trying to reconfigure ovals, and I think there were some potential around Hunters Hill. But at the end of the day, even if we reconfigure ovals, we're still going to need to find ways to get more playing time. This gives the option that will basically give soccer the ability to play the soccer that they need. And look, ultimately, anything that encourages kids to get out, play organised sports, team sports, it is these sporting clubs to me that are really underpinning the community. When you go down there on a Saturday or Sunday, see everybody there, that's community. It might not be everybody's community. You're not a member of the club, or you don't play sport. You might just think it's a nuisance. But for those people that go there, I've seen it, and it is where people interact, get outside, and just do good things. Now, the foreshadowed motion ultimately it really does nothing but just tie this whole thing up in bureaucratic knots. That'll take at least a year for all that stuff to happen. And then we're basically where we are now. So really, if we're going to do this, we need to decide this now and stop wasting time. We've got 19% of kids in Hunters Hill under 14. They're not here. They're not speaking, but we've got members of the community that are volunteers that are speaking for them. We have to represent we have to remember that people we represent may not be in here. We haven't heard from anyone under 14, which is 20% of Hunters Hill. We need to provide recreation, sporting facilities for our community. We're not doing that. Gladesville Reserve it's atrocious. There's sand, there's rocks. People get so. It is, as it was said, don't let perfect get in the way of the greater good. This is going to be good for the community, and I would plead with fellow councillors to just support the club on this so that we can have more kids outside playing organised sport and strengthen our community.
Are there any further speakers? If not, Rod, sorry.
Councillor. Look, I would love to see a first-class facility there. I accept that is there at the present time is unacceptable. I think this alternative solution offers a great deal. It does away with all the environmental concerns. In the process, I did some time ago, councillors were given a business case, which it matches with what's in the paper, although it was a little bit more complete. I did a lot of substitution of numbers into that business case for the artificial or for a natural turf. The natural turf we're talking about, Mossman has used very successfully at Littlehead Oval. I believe they can get up to 35 hours. I believe at the moment they're getting something like 29 hours, and that oval is in pristine condition after quite a number of years. So I'm deeply concerned about the environmental issues. All the people I talk to are not convinced by the arguments. I agree with Ms. Armstrong in terms of some of the missing information in the report. The report misses out in a lot. It doesn't talk about the heat effects on the with environmental or with artificial turf. And it's also a great concern, as Ms. Armstrong also raised, that we've got a position where with two ministers in the current New South Wales government expressed concern about artificial turf. The planning minister himself has started this inquiry. This was spelled out in the Sydney Morning Herald article that Ms Armstrong referred to. I believe also that the Honourable Matt Keane is also extremely concerned that, the carbon is going to the next thing he looks at. One of the things that was not mentioned in this report in any place was, as the motion that I've foreshadowed suggests, is at no stage does it say anything about what the carbon sink capabilities of a new, healthy, natural playing surface down there would be. On the other hand, we don't have any assessment as to what the carbon emissions are over the duration or the full life cycle. So I guess we're looking at an analysis of 25 years or something, but that's something we should be looking at. We don't have any of that information for us. So I'm not prepared to take that risk. One of the other risks that there is with this proposal is that and it's a financial risk, and that is that on the figures that councillors were given, I believe from memory, I think it was 79,000 a year was to go into a sinking fund. And that sinking fund couldn't be possibly funded by our local football clubs because they're very fairly paying ground hire fees at the rates that are sort of normal in the Mayoral region. So that what's happening is that we have people coming from outside paying premium rates, and that's going to have the effect of displacing our residents in Henley and Huntley's Point from use of what is their most valuable recreational asset. And as a South Ward councillor who represents those areas, I represent the whole of Hunters Hill, but as a South Ward councillor who represents those areas, I've had very strong feedback from people at Henley, and they are not happy about this proposal.
Is there any further debate? Right of reply, councillor.
Well, the club are here, and the club are saying that they're happy with the rates and charges, and they're going to do things to accommodate the sinking fund. We've also got the Ravens who could use the facility if it was upgraded. We've also got the capacity to use it for hockey. But capacity once the field is built to do more than 22 hours or 25 hours or 30 hours or 35 hours. That's the whole point of building a synthetic surface. Is it as good as grass? No, it's not, but it's usable, and it's usable for more of the time. The alternative to defer this to a committee, appoint a Enviro Solutions company without any process, and to kick the can down the road for a site visit to Mossman, when we know what the outcome of that will be, which is that grass is not going to have the capacity that a synthetic surface is, seems nonsensical to me. We made a commitment through NESROC, adopted in this chamber, that we would increase the usage of our fields, and that we would do that in an innovative way to make sure that across the NESROC councils, we were all carrying a part of the load of increased sport usage, a growing population, and the capacity, the lack of capacity for new fields to be built. This delivers that. It's funded. Councillor raised the fact that it is a drain on council funds. We're being gifted $2 million from the state government. That's not a drain on ratepayers' funds. That's the state government doing something that council should, within its rights, be doing, which is providing for the community that which it needs. And what it needs at the moment at Gladesville Reserve is the synthetic surface to go ahead.
That now concludes debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? They're at loss. There was a foreshadowed motion by councillor Sanderson.
Do I have a second?
Councillor Prasoff.
Thank
You
you.
should speak to your motion.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I think I've said a lot to it already. I would be delighted to see improved facilities down there, the facilities that can be used by the whole community, not fenced off, not allowing people to walk their dogs as they do down there. That park, as Armstrong rightly said, belongs to the whole community, and it has to stay that way. The motion that I have drafted, I don't envisage taking significant time. We could all get in our cars tomorrow and go down and have a look at Middlehead Oval. It is an absolutely superb facility. I was outstanding. It is the best local government or council managed reserve I've seen anywhere. And I've seen a lot because I used to referee rugby. I've refereed on Concord Oval. So the other thing that comes out of this, there are a lot of ways that this can be handled. In terms of the wear, there is an issue with the wear on with soccer. You get a lot of wear in front of the goals and so on. In my analysis of this work, I had a conversation with Dr. Mick Batten, who's a renowned expert in this area. And he's suggesting for the funding that I've allowed in the case analysis that I've done, or business case that I've done, that you could actually, there's enough money there for from time to time, you just cut out the area around the goal line, patch it in, and you're back to having a perfect oval again. So, and the drainage is a big issue. I believe it's got to be well resourced. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that $1 million can build you, additional change facilities and all the rest. No, I'm saying that what will happen is that we will save $1 million by putting.
Brad's gone.
No, I don't believe that's the case. On the information I have, I think somewhere in this report, it says that the grant would be open for, for anything that's going to improve the playing time, and the playing time will be improved. Mossman are getting 29 hours easily out of Middlehead Oval, and my understanding is they could probably get more. So it is going to do a lot to increase that capacity. You are going to have, it won't be ideal for the club. The other point I'd make is that the NESROC material that we've been referring to, when that NESROC report came out, we were actually doing quite well. If you look at the percentages of or I think there was a figure that NESROC used, which was the number of or hectares of playing surface per head of population. We came third. The only two councils that were ahead of us were Ryde and Coringa.
It's 8 on this.
And Lane Cove are way behind. Now the other councils that have constraints, like North Sydney, are miles behind us. So we are already doing pretty well. The other issue is I would not have a bar of the earlier motion in that it was factually incorrect at the point 2. Some of the figures we've seen have come up by dividing club membership by the population of Hunters Hill. Now, a lot of the membership is outside Hunters Hill. So, if you start comparing those sort of figures, you're not doing a fair comparison. Anyway, that's what I'll say in the debate at this stage. We'll probably finish off with a right of reply.
Yes, Councillor Collins.
You're an absolute disgrace for doing this. It's absolutely. Have completely abandoned our obligation to the community, to all those kids that play that sport, because you had a predetermined outcome that you did not want this to happen. You know this, you don't want this to happen. Ever since it was brought up, you didn't want it to happen. So now it's been wrapped into bureaucratic knots and it's not going to happen. You don't represent the community because we've got 900 players there at that soccer club that now will not have this facility. We all know as councillors that all of those things on those items are going to mean that nothing happens for at least 12 months. And that's all you wanted. So I'm absolutely, I'm obviously I'm disappointed, but I'm also angry that this could actually happen, that we have $2 million so that we can have a sporting club that have the worst facilities out of all of their competition. And now that's not going to happen now because this amended motion means that it doesn't happen. So that's it. It's over. And I'm sorry to the club, but I don't even know what to say. The sporting clubs, the youth, anybody that under 18 that plays this sport, the adults that play this, they have to be completely ignored. And this is negligent. I cannot believe that $2 million to bring a state-of-the-art facility to Hunters Hill, where all our grounds are so poor, has just been knocked back like this. I'm sorry, but this is absolute disgrace, and you don't represent our community, and I hope you get thrown out in 3 months' time.
We'll find out.
Yeah, I think we will.
Any further debate? Councillor Cresswell.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Golly, look, I've spoken before on things at council that have made me lose friends and make enemies, and I'm disappointed to have to speak about this one. I'm incredibly grateful to the state member for the $2 million that he's offered. Upgrade of Gladesville Reserve. Why we are where we are today is that the business case was not done well enough. I've been squeaking about it for quite some time. There weren't good enough arguments in there for or against actually anything. Not for a sustainable all-weather playing surface that included enough filtration to guarantee me that microplastics wouldn't be going into the Parramatta River where people swim. No guarantee about the irrigation of an all-weather synthetic playing surface, just a sort of random comment about the irrigation of a grass surface. Business case wasn't good enough, and the general manager will forgive me because I know that she's aware that I regularly compliment her and her staff on the hard work that they do to present the material they present to council. So I just, in a way, I kind of resent that I'm here now, because over a month ago, I said the business case isn't good enough, and before it comes to council, can it be substantially solidified? There's not enough in there to convince me that a synthetic surface is safe enough yet. And Rob Stokes thinks so too. Now, he doesn't think so because a lot of people lobbied him. He's looked at the evidence and he thinks it needs investigating. What Councillor Sanderson is suggesting here is an opportunity for us to get the business case right. And I would love to see it done promptly. I know that we have some valuable people on the Sustainability Committee, and I'm hoping that they'll be a part of this process to ensure that we do it properly. And if a business case came back to show me that an all-weather synthetic playing field is 100% part of a circular economy right now, not maybe in the future, that cork is not synthetic itself and isn't bound with polymers, that rubber is a good option, that heat, we're not creating a heat sink and losing a carbon sink, and that the members of the community who want to walk and enjoy the space can do so just as well. I didn't see any of that in this business case, and I'm sorry and I'm sad that I didn't. And I'm sorry to the club, because I've watched the club grow for many years now, with people in area and out of area, and in area and out of area are very welcome in Hunters Hill at all our clubs and all our fields, as our children also go out to other areas too. So I'm disappointed because I want to see the club have a home base. Actually, I think every club does deserve a home base. And I hope that Gladesville Reserve will be that. Whether we opt to go down a path of the field that Councillor Sanderson's hoping to take us all to very soon, or whether we opt in the very, very near future to be guaranteed of the safety of a synthetic field. So I'm not saying I won't vote for a synthetic field. I'm saying I won't vote for what's being proposed in this business plan. It's not good enough. And the reason I believe it's not good enough is because I've read it and I don't think it's good enough. And because I've been on the phone for 4 days taking calls from residents pleading with me to not go ahead and support this motion. I'm very sad to not support it. You know I appreciate the hard work you all do. Very disappointing. Okay, so that's all. I think we've got a real opportunity now to do a better job of this. I certainly believe that our state minister is not going to withdraw funding for the upgrade of Gladesville Reserve for the very important All Saints team. I am certain he won't do it. And if we get a top-notch grass field from all the teenagers who play soccer that I've talked to, they'd much rather play on a top-notch grass field than a synthetic field. But as I say, if you can convince me that we're not going to fill our harbour and our river that we've worked so hard to be a member of restoring, you can convince me that we're not filling it with the microplastics that are showing up in every other council area near water, or that we have a good enough filtration system attached to it, I'll be convinced. This doesn't do it. And I'm very, very sorry about the delay it's going to cause. But we have to do it right so that in 40 years, when someone comes back and looks me in the eye and asks me what's happening in the Parramatta River because I voted for a synthetic playing field that I shouldn't have voted for, I can say, actually, here's the information I had at the time. Best information available at the time. This is not the best information available.
Any further debate? Councillor Miles.
So we're kicking this to the Sustainability Committee, which Councillor Crassoy and Councillor Sanderson's on. And we're not going to look at a synthetic surface unless we have a facility to recycle synthetic surfaces, which won't exist unless synthetic surfaces are produced and built. And the polymers are not in full, which they are, which seems wildly illogical to me. All I can say is this grant was for an all-weather playing surface. It was for a synthetic surface. Be under no illusion, it is gone. It is not my opinion. I was at the announcement and in the discussions prior to the announcement.
We weren't told.
And all through this process, when I brought the original motion about putting a synthetic surface and investigating it, it was brought out of that announcement. Anthony funded the facility on the basis that it was a synthetic surface. So the idea that he's going to stick $2 million of taxpayers' money into something that was not committed to, that was not agreed to, and that the club doesn't want, is never going to happen. All I can say is I'm sorry to the club and vote with your vote. You've got 5 months for the election. And I'm committed to this synthetic surface.
As I'll be voting on this, I think it's important that I put my position on the table. It's very clear to me that it's not a winner-take-all situation here. It's not all or nothing. There will be a viable and good playing field there as a turf field. It will increase capacity, not to the extent that we're talking about here, but you need to weigh up the benefits versus the problems or potential problems. And I've heard very clearly that the Minister for Planning himself has some concerns, is going to the trouble of carrying out an inquiry with his department. And I think any responsible person would want to wait to see what the government itself determines in relation to this matter. It is not a winner-take-all. There is the opportunity here to get a very high-quality facility, both in terms of turf and a playing field surface and in terms of other auxiliary facilities for playing. I don't know whether it's fair to push the cricket people out. I haven't come to terms with that myself, and I don't know what discussions that are taking place in relation to that. But I think it's important that we get it right. I think it's important that we make sure that the best outcome is a durable one that can meet the needs of not only our sporting groups, but also our community aspirations and expectations. So I don't accept from where I'm sitting that it's a winner take all. I think everybody can benefit from this. And I would be surprised if the government considering its own review of synthetic surfaces would withdraw funding. And I would like to establish with our local member what his position is, because what I've heard tonight is not what I've heard from him. So it'll be interesting to get those facts on the table. Is the government going to withdraw the funds so it's a lose for everybody? Or are those funds going to be committed to the benefit of our community? Maybe not to the extreme that we're talking about here with artificial turf, but there's certainly important gains to be had through going through a more traditional process, a process that will give an increased opportunity for playing, but meet a whole lot of other requirements at the same time. So right of reply, Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't really believe I need to say a great deal. I think you summed it up extremely well. I think this is the best outcome, particularly for our residents at Henley and Huntley's point that yeah, it is an extremely valuable resource. And I've been astounded at the number of people contacted me from that area expressing concern. So I'm very confident that I'm doing what this community wants. And at the same time, I don't want this process to slow anything down. I want to see an outstanding facility at that ground, and I'm quite sure it can happen. I think the science is there, but as Councillor Crasswell pointed out, we didn't do the analysis correctly. The business case should have had that comparison in it from the first place. I shouldn't have had to go out and do it on my own to satisfy myself that there were problems with the business case. So I think
that's not this.
No, please, please.
It isn't. I point of order, Mr. Mayor.
No, sorry.
I'd like to raise a point of order.
No. Well, okay. Yes, what's your point of order?
It's being disrespectful to staff. If you're not happy with the report, that's you need to take that up in your own time. But that is in this forum, you need to be respectful to all staff, and that is inappropriate from you.
No, that is absolutely wrong. I was critical of the business case. It was not meant in any way critical of the staff member who produced it. There might be all sorts of constraints.
I asked withdraw, Mr. Mayor, his comments.
Well, he's explained that it was in relation to a report, not in relation to.
But we don't need to finish this debate on that too.
It has
ruled.
He doesn't withdraw.
No, he doesn't. So come on, Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, well, look, it's sad to end that debate on that way. I mean, I'm incredibly supportive of sporting facilities. We've just got to do everything right. We've just got to get the, if the business case had been right in the first place, we wouldn't have ended up here. I mean, I wrote to the general manager not long after that briefing where we received this information, asking for information, and saying quite firmly that the business case needed to weigh up between the comparison of natural turf. We didn't get it anywhere in the report. At the end of the day, I don't see that we had any other choice.
That concludes debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Councillor Collins and Miles in opposition. That now brings us to the next item. Well, no, it doesn't. Does it? Yes. 5. 4.13. 4.13.
The new revised.
Oh, okay, yes, sorry.
Not sure what they're going. I don't know why these are all moved around, but
4.13, there's a speaker for this item, that's why it's been moved around. Is there still a speaker for this item? They've left.
There is a written submission.
A written submission, okay, could you please read the submission?
This is Mr. Tom Atkins.
No, wrong item. Oh, sorry, you're right.
Item 3.6, Margaret Street, Woolwich, proposed changes to parking restrictions. Firstly, as previously indicated, I support the Traffic Committee's decision for proposed no parking area around the turning circle in front of the boat ramp and up to the 90-degree angle parking. However, this will need to be enforced to be successful. I also support the proposed mobility space adjacent to number 6 Alfred Street. Additional considerations, parking in Margaret Street and Alfred Street, Woolwich.
Can I remind councillors and staff you shouldn't be using your mobile phones during the council meeting?
Policy?
I believe so. It's not
Where is it?
Which policy?
Oh, well, okay, so just continue on your mobile phone and not listening to what a resident.
However, many of these issues are still unresolved as little successful action appears to have taken place to enforce compliance of the very conditions the council has considered and implemented. Displaced parking. Much of the problem stems from displaced parking of motor vehicles and boat trailers from both members of the public using the boat ramp and spilling over from operations associated with Woolwich Marina, forcing vehicles and trailers further up into Margaret Street and Alfred Streets. There has been and is no satisfactory or well incentivised parking for boat trailers and related trade trailers around the southern end of Margaret Street to encourage use of the Harbour Trust car park or designated boat trailer parking spaces opposite the Woolwich Marina entrance. Many users ignore current signage with vehicles and/or trailers left on the roadside for many days, weeks, months, and seemingly immunity. Personal representation, phone calls, emails, and letters have been made to council over the last decade regarding displaced parking impact on surrounding family homes, including a letter on the 14th of May 2018 from the now late Dr. J.A. Boots. Police and council rangers have called on several occasions regarding noise for large public events at the marina in addition to parking issues. However, there is a clear gap in Hunters Hill Council's enforcement of parking restrictions outside normal business hours with no provision for council rangers' contacts for local residents outside business hours. Police have previously been called to clear parked cars which obstruct access to the lower section of Margaret Street, south of Alfred Street. Several neighbours, 2A, 2B for Margaret Street plus Alfred Street, have impacted by cars parking across and into the driveways, which obstructed their residential driveway access. Recommendations: 1, reconsider parking management options. A, consider clarifying and refining recent Hunters Hill boat trailer parking restrictions to include all types of trailers and discourage non-resident owners moving trailers just across to the nearest intersection after they have been notified of overstaying the 28 days. B, review current 90-degree angle parking bay 4P restrictions at the southern end of Margaret Street as they appear to be unenforceable. Consider either out-of-office enforcement of current restrictions or change the enforcement parking restriction signage that discourages all types of trailers being left in situ for many days, weeks and months. D, consider change existing 90-degree angle parking 4P signage to clearly prohibit overstaying overnight parking. E, manage HHC's enforcement resources to projects that these restrictions do apply 24/7. F, enforce no parking restrictions in the turning circle at the southern end of Margaret Street in front of the boat ramp. 2, once parking restrictions are changed, ensure enforcement of those conditions. It is important that council should enforce existing conditions to minimise the impact on local residents with access to homes and domestic visitors. 3, enforce Woolwich Marina DA consent on-site parking conditions. Note DA 2009-1128-2 for additional berths was refused due to a list of reasons, including insufficient off-street parking, insufficient parking in proximity, no on-street parking proposed, detriment to parking for cars and trailers on the east side of Margaret Street for public boat launch ramp. Not in the public interest, undesirable precedent for incremental development. We agree that this is a pattern for development by stealth. The later DA 2009-11283 also specified that 12 cars to be provided, including one for visitors. Annex C recommended parking layouts set out the require parking spaces on site. However, these 12 spaces are not generally available for parking, as 3 of the 4 in the tandem under the building parking bays are used for storage. This displaces the additional vehicles parking back onto Margaret Street. Margaret Street Woolwich is not an entertainment or commercial precinct, and it is important that residents' character of area is preserved. Thank you, Tom Atkins.
Right. There's a move, councillor Collins has moved the motion.
I'll move, an amended motion. These minutes, I will speak to it. Have these minutes been accepted by the committee? Because I understand that there were supposed to be some changes made from Anthony Roberts' office.
No.
For the local traffic committee minutes, no?
No changes.
From the 18th of March meeting?
That are relevant to the business paper, no.
So have these minutes been passed by the traffic committee?
They've been circulated, I understand.
But have they all signed off on them?
Have they?
The only comments that came back were from the local member's office, which were addressed.
Yeah.
Well, they haven't been put in the minutes though.
That's correct.
So they haven't. So if the minutes haven't been accepted by the committee, what shouldn't they be? Shouldn't they go back to the committee before they're circulated?
So the minutes went out to all committee members. Sorry, through you.
Yep.
Went out to all committee members. The only comments that came back were from the local member's office,
yes,
which were addressed through the chair, and they were determined that they wouldn't go into there because they weren't relevant to the business of the meeting.
Okay,
that's all.
I would just speak to that matter. What the issue was when on a particular matter where the local member sent an observer, which is allowed under the guidelines. The mayor insisted that the observer sent by the local member leave the meeting, even though the mayor has actually, I understand you've allowed other councillors to attend local traffic committee meetings, but decided that you didn't want to have an observer from the local member's office, which is completely inappropriate. And having read the guidelines, which we did, it was determined that a observer was allowed to be sent by the local member's office. And quite frankly, Mayor, your behaviour at that meeting, I think, was unacceptable. And I think you should be forwarding an apology to Angus McCaffrey for the way he behaved at that meeting.
Any further debate?
Yeah, I'd just like to support one of the comments that were made in that submission from Mr. Tom Atkinson. People around the Woolwich Marina do have significant parking problems, and the proposal was sent out. The committee has partially dealt with it. I think somehow or other we need to do a bit more for the people there. As I recall, one of the last recommendations, in fact the last two recommendations from former Public Transport and Traffic Advisory Committee, are still outstanding. One of those I have followed up with a question with notice, which I'm pleased that has been some answer to. But it's something we've got to be, difficulty is now we've only got a technical committee rather than having a community in this area, that people are not able to get their views across. And I think that's something that we would need to contemplate soon, but somehow or other, we've got to find a mechanism to assist these people. I'm getting a huge amount of information. If necessary, I'll bring a recommendation back to council on that issue myself.
Is there any further debate? In answer to those comments, Councillor Collins, I think it's important to note that Councillor Crassoy gave the courtesy of asking that she attend the meeting, and that was granted.
Sorry, point of order. So
No.
did Angus McCaffrey. That was actually
No, he
sent
did not.
to. I'm sorry.
That was not forwarded to me.
Well,
The
it was
first,
sent to.
was it?
Yeah, it was sent to the general manager. And
Anyway, I'm not going to enter into the debate. It's peripheral to the
well, no,
content of
because
the
you stated something that wasn't the case. So
well, it's your opinion. It's your opinion.
It's not an opinion if notice was given. It was given.
It wasn't given to the chair.
Well, it was given to the staff, and so
Well,
you know.
so be it. But it wasn't given to the chair, and I wasn't aware of his attendance, and so therefore it would have been courteous to let the chair know that they were attending the meeting. And that's the end of the matter. It's not relevant to the main.
Well, it doesn't excuse the
discussion.
behaviour, though. Anyway.
Well, that's your opinion. I don't believe there's any behavioural issues.
Treat
And that
people with
case-
respect, Mr. Mayor.
We're not in a debating mode. The debating mode is councillors take turn. I'm answering your question and I've done that. Any further discussion in relation to the minutes and the adoption of the minutes? If not, right of reply. Not used. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare it carried. We now move to the next item, which is 4.17, and we need to formally move extension of the meeting for a half an hour. Councillor Miles, Councillor Sanderson, put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare it carried. The meeting will terminate at 10 p.m. We now move to item 14.7, and we have a speaker. Is that correct?
4.17, I believe.
4.17 is what I said.
No,
is there a speaker in relation to this matter, General Mayor? Mr. Jenkins, would you like to address council, please? 3 minutes would be appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. This address is in relation to the Property Advisory Committee. It has been meeting since 5th of March 2019 with Councillor Zach Miles as its chair and the General Manager, Lisa Miss Campbell, on the committee. The committee adopted a charter in October 2019 that required declarations of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests at meetings, and that members' personal interests or the interests of any associated person are not to conflict with the interests of the council or the community. The charter also requires the committee and its council staff to keep minutes of meetings that are then confirmed and reported as soon as practicable to a subsequent council meeting. It is the obligation of the chair and the general manager to ensure that this is done in a timely fashion. No minutes of meetings were in fact reported to council from this committee between the 16th of October 2019 to now, the minutes appearing for the first time at this council meeting, the 19th of April of 2021. This is confirmed in the agenda in these simple words. Due to an administrative oversight, the minutes had not been formally reported to council. End of quote. Now, this is unsatisfactory to say the least. It is only by the reporting of minutes that the community can find out what a committee is doing and what it is recommending to the council. One might ask, Is there a conflict of interest on this committee that should appear in the minutes? Because there's a section there for the minutes to deal with that. Councillor Zach Miles, the chair of the Property Committee, has been employed for the last 3 years by Wholecap, an alternative provider of finance to property developers and commercial real estate borrowers. Before that, he was for 6 years a political lobbyist with First State Advisors and then Cornerstone Group, whose clients included property developers. He has not declared any conflict of interest in the minutes. This committee may be looking at rezoning of land, increased heights and densities of developments, including residential, selling or developing public land, and the like.
Councillor Sanderson, Councillor Miles. Put the motion, all those in favour? Very carried unanimously.
The minutes now presented, which we can see for the first time in the papers, have a number of quotes amongst many others, various options for redevelopment, need to resolve ownership issues surrounding the Crown land, preliminary financial analysis of the viability of each site, and 4.75 million in public legacy funding pending the outcome of the grant application. What grant application? Both Zach Miles and Ben Collins are endorsed Liberal councillors on Hunters Hill Council. They are both on this property committee. They are both obliged to follow the directions and policies of the Liberal Party.
Further extension, Councillor Sanderson, Councillor Miles. Put the motion, all those in favour, against? Very carried.
Many members of the local community feel that you can't serve two masters in local government. You should only have one master as a councillor to pursue the needs and aspirations of the local community, the public interest, and the public good. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Councillor Miles.
Dickens, are you aware of Councillor Mark Bennett on his work history?
Yes, I think he was a psychologist. No, not that I knew of. Oh, well,
Now, the other
you would probably know.
members of the committee, people like Max McFarlane, do you know Max McFarlane?
I have met Max McFarlane.
Do you know what he does really?
Provides finance, I think.
Finance too.
I don't know, developers, I suppose. Right, okay.
Do you know what Mr. Wilson Wise does?
No,
He's a member of the committee.
not really, no.
Do you know Mr. Wilson Wise?
No.
No. Well, he works for a developer. You know Mr. Paul McBurney, who's a member of the committee?
I don't.
No? Do you know what he does for a living?
No.
No, he's a valuer in the property industry. You know what Sean O'Toole does? He's a member of the committee.
Are these all councillors on the council?
They're members of the committee.
Yeah, but they're not councillors on the council.
Do you know what was the profession of Mayor Ross Williams?
Yes, he worked for the public service.
What does he do now?
I think he's a councillor.
He's a consultant, providing consultancy, environmental consultancy.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Right.
He's on the committee. As is every other councillor around this table. Did you know that?
Well, I know that they've turned up of recent times, yes.
They're all members of the committee. Did you know that?
I know that Councillor Williams and Councillor Sanderson are.
And Councillor Crassoy.
And Crassoy's been there from the beginning. That's right, yeah.
That's all I have to ask.
Yes, well, I repeat my words that I put to the council.
Councillor Collins, you have a question.
So you're saying at the beginning of the meetings that councillors should declare their political party, even though it's quite clear and in the public, at the beginning of every meeting, they should declare belonging to a party as in the public interest?
That's what the charter says. The charter says that you declare an interest.
So,
at the start of each meeting, there's a section there, and I think you're asked, do you declare an interest? And the interest is, for example, that if you belong to a political party, let's call it the Labor Party or the Liberal Party, you have, when you become endorsed, you actually agree to abide the directions of the party and follow its policies. The point I'm making is when you're a councillor, you are supposed to follow the needs and aspirations of the community. And in my view, the public interest and the public good. Now, quite clearly, there will be times when that conflicts. It conflicted, as Councillor Zach Miles knows, very much during the forced amalgamations issue. And for
I think we're getting off track.
well,
That
I'm
answers
answering
my
a question,
to
but
you.
if you're unhappy with it, I'll stop.
I have another question, if I may. Mr. Jenkins, so it seems like you've got a fixation on the Liberal Party. Are you aligned to a particular party yourself?
No, I'm not.
At all?
No,
Do you
I'm not.
support any party?
I don't support.
Have you supported one in the past?
I think very early on.
Have you supported the Shooters Party?
No, I haven't.
Really?
But I did.
Can I just
No, let me finish. Let me finish. Let me
Okay,
finish.
that's fine.
I will reveal a little secret to you,
Yeah,
Councillor
sure.
Collins,
Sure.
if you'd like to know.
Yeah.
I can remember when a young Anthony Roberts first became the Liberal member. A young Anthony Roberts became a Liberal member of Parliament for this area. And he was running against, I think, the Labor Party, who'd been in office a long time. And he was seeking donations for his campaign. And I thought, what a nice young man this Mr. Roberts appears to be. I think the Labor Party policies and actions don't warrant my support. So I actually made a donation to him. So you can go and ask him that question. I support political parties who've got good policies and genuine people who are running for them. And so I vary. I don't follow one party or the other, but I support good parties that actually listen to the community and do the right thing by the public interest.
May I ask, did you support the Shooters Party at the Orange by-election in 2016? Did the Shooters Party have good policies? Giving guns to 12-year-olds?
No, the Shooters Party probably didn't have good policies in quite a number of areas. I supported the fact that unlike the Liberal Party, the Shooters Party actually believed that forced amalgamations was a bad policy. And they actually did that in Orange, got up and supported the fact that the community did not want, and indeed forced amalgamations. And indeed, so strong was that case in Orange that their member got elected. I think the first time that the Liberal Party had ever lost a seat that was its favourite seat that it had kept for years, it lost it to the Shooters and Fishers Party.
With your assistance?
No. I was making it very clear. No, you listen to what I have to say with respect. The fact is that the Liberal Party and the National Party had lost a lot of support over forced amalgamations. And the Shooters and Fishers came along and had a very good candidate who was saying, this is a wrong policy. And they supported him. And the group that I belong to, which is non-party political, had taken a very strong view against the Liberal Party and National Party's policy of forced amalgamations. And
Well, I think it's my question's not really been answered. It's been clarified now that Mr. Jenkins supports the Shooters Party.
I can go all night, Mr. Mayor, but
yeah, I'd like to table these for the minutes, actually.
No.
Yes, I would like to table
They're
these.
not relevant.
I've tabled these documents. They should be included.
What's the relevance?
The relevance is that this is a political stunt by Mr. Jenkins, who is I won't call it an unhealthy obsession, but there is certainly a strong indication to attack the Liberal Party at any opportunity.
Well,
and he hasn't declared
Councillor
that he
Collins-
supports the shooters party.
Councillor
And I have,
Collins-
in fact, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor,
Collins-
you're in this photo too. Did
Councillor
you support
Collins-
the shooters at the
Councillor
2016?
Collins, point of order.
Okay.
We're talking about the property committee here. Mr. Jenkins has given his presentation and answered questions to the best of his ability. If there's any further questions of,
I have a question.
it's got to be relevant to the matter at hand, which is the property committee.
When you were a barrister, did you what sort of law did you practice? Where were your clients? Were they developers? Did you ever act for a developer?
What's the relevance of it?
I'll answer it this way, Councillor Collins. I actually lectured for the Real Estate Institute in law at the university. So I actually knew people on the Real Estate Institute very well. And I knew that there are many people who belong to that institute who are professional and who do a good job. So I have no thing against development, good development, adaptive reuse, and I value highly those developments of the past, which we now acknowledge to be of heritage value, of which this municipality has many.
Okay, that concludes the.
Can I just table my very short 3-minute speech?
No, I'm not accepting that irrelevant.
Well, I'm tabling it.
Well, you're not
It's entitled to table it.
I'm not accepting because it's not relevant to the debate.
Well, I believe it is.
It's not today. It's not. Are there any, is there a motion in relation to this matter?
I'll move the motion, Mr. Mayor.
There a seconder? Is there any further, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Mr. Mayor, fairly self-explanatory.
Further debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. We now move to, where is my list? Yeah, 7.1, there's a speaker for that, who is Mr. McClellan, or Mrs. McClellan, sorry. 3 minutes. I'm very mindful of the time that we've got left in this meeting, and so if you could please.
Thank you. I'm very mindful of the time too, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I will be brief. Look, I just wanted to raise my concerns with council about recent events at Henley Bowling Club, as I know it, now called Henley Community Centre. I'm a resident of Henley for more than 36 years. I've lived in my current residence for 10 years, and we've always enjoyed a very peaceful, quiet environment. More recently, Henley Bowling Club, as I know it as, has been used for evening events, particularly in March. There were 3 consecutive Saturday nights where the function centre was used for functions. There was very loud noise, very loud amplified music. I call it subwoofers, thumper, oompa loompa, thumper, right, reverberating throughout the house. Strobe lighting, people congregating out on the balcony and making a lot of noise. I just wanted to be clear on what safeguards have been put in place by council if such a venue is to be used for such functions. As I said, I've lived in my current residence for more than 10 years. There hasn't been the use of that facility for those purposes. I'm not aware of any consultation with the community about the impact. I'm not aware of any noise assessments that have been made on the impact on neighbouring residents. And I just ask that there be consideration of safeguards. I'm a great supporter of use of community facilities, but at the same time, there should be respect and consideration for neighbouring residents. So I heard the debate around item 4.2 about Boronia Park. Similar safeguards such as those, such as limits on the hours of operation, the limits on numbers of patrons, requirements of organisers to meet certain conditions, limits on noise levels, all of those measures I did receive a response from one of your officers this afternoon, just before this meeting, and I have met with her briefly, and the invitation has been given to me to meet with her to work through some of the safeguards. But I would appreciate council's support for a balanced approach that respects all parties' needs, but particularly long-standing residents who pay rates to live in a peaceful community and environment. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions of Mrs.? Sorry. No questions?
Positives.
Yeah, that's right.
No, that's all right. I'm keeping you.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, so we now move to that question 7.1.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think I look forward to some of the matters I've asked in that particular question. I've noticed that there'll be a response in the I hope that Mr. McClellan's input will be considered in the actions we take. But I do note again that we have a policy that still refers to or rental procedure that still refers to legislation as well and truly out of date. Clearly something needs to be done with that documentation. And I think, the other questions that we need that I've asked also need answering. So I look forward to forward to receive those questions in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
You can ask a question.
General Manager, do we need to, that committee in the whole, does that need to be done today, or can that be deferred to the next, are we going to defer everything to the next meeting?
We'll have to, because we're running out of time unless we bring that one forward.
Can I just ask the director, is that time sensitive, or can it wait till Monday, next Monday?
Rick, can I move that we take everything from this business paper and move it to next Monday?
Yes, you can.
Rather than defer everything.
Is there a
to the next
seconder to the Councillor Miles? All those in favour of moving the remainder of the business paper to our extraordinary meeting on the 10th, I suspect?
26th.
26th.
Was it? Oh, yeah, cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Any discussion? Put the motion, all those in favour? Against, declare it carried. Now that we've moved all our business to the next meeting, that now, unless there's any questions, that without notice, that we'll conclude the meeting. There's none. I'll conclude the meeting at 9.